Chapter 189. What is this? The audience was in an uproar, as they had never seen such a treasure before. Yu Qianqiu turned around to look at Wu Lixue, and the latter just happened to turn around to look at him. Both of them were slightly startled when their eyes met. The former revealed a questioning look as though he was saying, "Are you sure you want this item? Don't you want to exchange it for something you like?" However, it seemed like Wu Lixue hadn't reached the realm of telepathy with him yet. Her charming face blushed as she turned around shyly. Fortunately, her entire face was covered, and she could sit at the side without anyone seeing through her shyness. Yu Qianqiu pouted indifferently. "Since you like it, then I will buy it." The host of the auction was Wu clan's elder, Wu Tai. Wu Tai looked at clan head Wu Sihai, who was in the dark room at the side of the stage, and the latter nodded. Wu Tai turned around and swept his gaze below before speaking in a clear voice. "Everyone, the auction will still follow the old rules. The highest bidder wins. I won't say any more nonsense, and will introduce the first item to everyone." Looking at the item that was flickering in red and black, Wu Tai shook his head and sighed. It is shameful to say this. For so many years, there hasn't been an item that our Wu clan couldn't appraise. Today we have finally encountered one. Our Wu clan can't differentiate the authenticity of the first item, but I believe it is also a treasure. According to the seller's estimation, this item might be the egg of the divine bird Vermilion Bird. Our Wu clan has flipped through the ancient records to find the legends. The divine bird Vermilion Bird's egg does have some similarities with this item, but we can't be certain. In view of this, after discussing with the seller, we have decided to make this the first item. If you are interested, why don't you buy it and incubate it? Who knows, you might really be able to hatch a divine bird Vermilion Bird. Haha. Once this statement was out, it instantly caused the audience to burst into laughter. What a joke, divine bird Vermilion Bird. That was something that only existed in legends. Who had seen it before? If it was true, why didn't the seller incubate such a divine item himself? Why did he want to auction it? Liang Yu Qianqiu also felt that this was a bit absurd. He looked at Wu Lixue, only to see a pair of large eyes curiously staring at the so-called Vermilion Bird egg. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. "I will buy it." "Everyone." Wu Tai waved his hand and said, "The first item Vermilion Bird egg. The starting price is 5,000 upper-grade spirit stones. Every increment must be no less than 1,000 upper-grade spirit stones. Those who are willing to buy, please bid. The highest bidder wins." Haha. The audience burst into laughter again. If it was really a Vermilion Bird egg, then selling it at 5,000 yuan was a bit too cheap. After everyone laughed, they looked around to see which idiot would bid for this thing. For a long time, no one made a bid. Even Bai Zizong, and the other three couldn't help but look at Yu Qianqiu. He didn't look like someone who would go back on his words. Yu Qianqiu sat quietly unmoved. On the other hand, Wu Lixue was a little embarrassed. Could it be that he was afraid of being laughed at by buying this thing? However, she didn't think that everyone was covered up. So who would know who was who? Yu Qianqiu had his own plans. No one is bidding. Wu Tai looked around, shook his head and sighed. Wu clan holds a grand auction once every 5 years. I didn't expect it to be unsold today. Finished speaking, he waved his hand at the disciples on both sides, signaling them to bring the item down. "Wait. I will buy it with 5,000 upper-grade spirit stones." It was a woman's voice. Her tone was pretty good. Everyone looked over. Someone was bidding at the corner of the front row. Many of them guessed that it was a young mistress from some sect who had too much money. Haha. At least it didn't go unsold. Wu Tai said excitedly. "Is there anyone else bidding? If not, this item will belong to this lady." Just when everyone was sneering in their hearts, Yu Qianqiu raised one hand and said, "I will bid 6,000. There was another uproar, but no one knew that he was cursing in his heart. Damn it. I wanted to take advantage of this at the most crucial moment. Why did you come out to mess things up? The woman who made the bid earlier looked over and raised her hand. 7,000. 8,000. Yu Qianqiu shouted again. That woman raised her hand again without hesitation. 10,000. Just when Yu Qianqiu wanted to raise the price again, someone shouted. 15,000. It was a man's voice. Adding 5,000 in one go, Yu Qianqiu stopped bidding. Damn it. There's someone even more sinister than me. Just like everyone else. They all looked at the black-clothed man in the middle, who acted as if nothing had happened. This time, no one laughed anymore. They all looked at the vermilion bird egg on the stage. Could it be that there was really someone who knew what it was? 16,000. That woman raised the price again. 20,000. That man also raised the price again. He was obviously more generous than that woman. The woman hesitated for a while and finally shouted, 20,000. Under everyone's gaze, the man raised his hand. 20,000. It seemed like he was determined to win. And that woman finally stopped. After waiting for a while, Wu Tai looked around and shouted, 20,000. Is there anyone else bidding? 30,000. Yu Qianqiu raised his hand again. To someone who was determined to win, there was no need to be so stingy when raising the price. Who asked him to also be determined to win? Everyone originally thought that Yu Qianqiu had been scared off, but who knew that it would start again? This time, everyone knew that there was going to be a good show to watch. The two people who were determined to win were going to have some sparks. That man paused for a moment and raised his hand. 50,000. Yu Qianqiu said without hesitation, 100,000. That woman in the corner suddenly looked at him and knew that she was tricked by him. 11,000 increments. It turned out that he didn't even put it in his eyes. Wu Lixue, who was at the side, looked at him with her heart thumping. It turned out that he really wanted to buy it for her. After waiting for a moment, Wu Tai laughed heartily and said, it has already been raised to 100,000. Does this mister still want to raise it? Of course he was happy. The Wu clan would take 20% of the transaction price of every item. And this 100,000 would be a profit of 20,000 for the Wu clan. How could he not be happy? And the mister he mentioned was naturally the man in the middle. The latter raised his hand and said, 150,000. The crowd was in an uproar as this price was already very high. Yu Qianqiu said indifferently, 300,000. The crowd instantly felt as though they were struck by lightning, and there was absolute silence. He doubled the price in an instant, and it was already 60 times the base price. That woman in the corner took a glance at him. Previously, she was still a little angry, but now, she had completely lost her temper. It wasn't that he was tricking her, but she simply didn't have the strength to accept the challenge. When Wu Zihai, who was in the dark room on the stage, heard the bid, he suddenly looked at Yu Qianqiu. One had to know that Yu Qianqiu's seat was arranged by the Wu clan in advance, and he naturally knew who was sitting there. Wu Lixue didn't even dare to raise her head. This man was fine when he didn't show his prowess, but once he did, he would be so domineering and awe-inspiring, and she was completely convinced. For her, he spent 300,000 high-grade spirit stones to buy an unknown item. She was truly perturbed, and felt that her request was too excessive. Bai Zizong and the others looked at one another in dismay. They knew that Yu Qianqiu was rich, but they didn't expect him to be this rich. 300,000 high-grade spirit stones to buy an item as a gift for a woman. He was truly ruthless. They knew that it would be hard for them to do such a thing. Wu Liqing was now truly admiring his grandfather's foresight. If Shui really followed Yu Qianqiu, she definitely wouldn't feel bad. At the very least, she wouldn't run out of money. Chapter 190. It was the first time the crowd saw someone auction an item like this. The other party only bid 150,000, and he directly raised it to 300,000. Even if he was rich, he didn't have to do this. Actually, Yu Qianqiu didn't want to do this. The key was that he had to buy this broken thing. Looking at the other party's bidding, he was really rich and overbearing. If the two of them continued to compete, who knew how high the price would go? Therefore, he decided to be even more ruthless. As long as you're not afraid that I'll give up halfway, you can follow me and raise the price if you have the ability. Wu Tai was excited and shouted, it's already 300,000. Is there anyone else? Does that gentleman still want to raise the price? Everyone's heart was beating fast. If that person followed and raised the price, according to Yu Qianqiu's way of raising the price, it might double again. But if he raised the price and Yu Qianqiu didn't, then he would really suffer a big loss. It wasn't rare for there to be shills in the auction house. It was to raise the price of the item they were auctioning, and then suddenly stop bidding. The item that the buyer originally needed to pay 10,000 spirit stones would often be raised by several times. Looking at Yu Qianqiu's bidding method, it really looked like shills. In fact, both of them looked like it. That person paused and shook his head, indicating that he didn't want to raise the price. The whole crowd heaved a sigh of relief. Yu Qianqiu's worried heart also relaxed. Then, when he thought of paying 300,000 top-grade spirit stones, his heart ached. This unlucky girl. If you wanted something valuable, I would be more comfortable paying money. But it just had to be this broken egg. I don't even know if it's an egg. If it's a glowing stone, I'll definitely vomit blood. But there's no other way. Who asked me to already agree to it? Sigh. The relationship that I built with great difficulty with the 4 major families can't be destroyed. I'll find a chance to earn it back. That's what Yu Qianqiu thought. Good. Since no one is raising the price, then this vermilion bird egg is this gentleman's. Wu Tai announced loudly. He didn't expect that the first item to be auctioned would be sold at such a good price. Usually, the items in the auction would be the best, and the last item to be auctioned would be the best. On the stage, one of the Wu clansmen walked to Yu Qianqiu's side and asked him if he still wanted to continue with the auction. If he still wanted to continue, Yu Qianqiu could ask him to settle the money for the first round, and the rest of the auction would continue after he returned. Yu Qianqiu indicated that he would continue to participate and stood up to follow him. The auction entered a short break. This seemed to be troublesome, but in fact there was no other way. The cultivation world was not like the secular world. If a cultivator with a high cultivation deliberately made trouble and bid for everything, but in the end, didn't pay a single cent and floated away, who could stop him? Wouldn't the entire auction become a child's play? This kind of thing wasn't said randomly. It had really happened before, so there was such a rule. Everyone was used to it and could understand it. The Wu clansmen respectfully led him backstage. They had no choice but to be respectful. Those who could casually take out 300,000 high-grade spirit stones were big customers. After all, they were doing business. There were many people backstage, and even Wu Sihai came out from the dark room. Although the Wu clansmen didn't wear black robes like him, Yu Qianqiu didn't recognize him. Someone led him to a big funnel, and he knew that it was a magic tool for counting spirit stones. Yu Qianqiu had seen it in the spirit stone mine in Angquangsung before. He took out 300,000 high-grade spirit stones in one go, and if it was counted by the number of people, who knew how long it would take to count? An elder beside Wu Sihai walked over and pointed at the magic tool with a smile. "Mister, please pay." He meant for Yu Qianqiu to pour the spirit stones directly into the funnel. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "I don't have that many high-grade spirit stones." That elder was stunned and smiled awkwardly. "Mister, you aren't joking, right?" Wu Sihai suddenly said, "It's the same if you use medial grade and low-grade spirit stones of the same value." That elder immediately reacted and nodded with a smile. "That's right. As long as it's spirit stones of the same value as 300,000 high-grade spirit stones, my humble auction house can exchange for it." "I don't have that many medial grade and low-grade spirit stones either," Yu Qianqiu said. He wasn't joking. Utopia provided for so many people, and he gave them a very high salary. The spirit stones accumulated back then might be more than 300,000 high-grade spirit stones. But if he took them out, how was he going to pay his subordinates in the future? Was he going to use supreme-grade spirit stones to pay them? What a joke! A group of Wu clansmen exchanged glances and quietly spread out, sealing off all the escape routes. They reckoned that they were here to cause trouble today. It was no wonder that the price was sky-high. They had never seen such an auction. That elder's expression twitched. He hadn't encountered such a thing in a long time. He said in a deep voice, "Mister, what exactly do you mean?" Wu Sihai spoke again. "It's fine if the total value of high-grade, medial grade, and low-grade spirit stones is more than 300,000 high-grade spirit stones." That elder didn't say anything and stared at Yu Qianqiu with a gloomy expression. Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, In that case, I can gather 300,000 high-grade spirit stones. But I still have a use for them. I can't give them to you. This time, even Wu Sihai's expression changed. Could it be that I misjudged? The surrounding Wu clansmen's hands were already on their sword hilts. They were ready to attack if something went wrong. Can I use supreme-grade spirit stones to pay? Yu Qianqiu took out a purple spirit stone and asked. Everyone was dumbfounded. They all stared at the purple spirit stone in his hand. This was the legendary supreme-grade spirit stone. Was it real or fake? Yu Qianqiu looked around and thought, this is going to be troublesome. Is he not going to accept supreme-grade spirit stones? If it really doesn't work, I can only use Utopia's spirit stones to make up for it. He asked, doesn't your Wu clansman accept supreme-grade spirit stones? Wu Sihai's throat kept moving up and down. He spoke with difficulty. Mister, can you let me appraise this supreme-grade spirit stone first? If it is real, I can naturally use it to pay. You scared me. I thought you didn't accept supreme-grade spirit stones. Don't worry. I can't take out any fake items. Here, feel free to inspect it. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said. Of course. I also believe that Mister doesn't have any fake items. Wu Sihai spoke like this, but he still took the purple spirit stone. Once the spirit stone was in his hand, before he even inspected it, he could already feel the faint spirit qi rippling on it. Wu Sihai held the spirit stone and rubbed it. The enchanting purple was crystal clear. It was the same size as other spirit stones. Observing it from the side, it was definitely formed naturally. He used both palms to put the purple stone in the center of his palm, closed his eyes, and injected a wisp of divine sense. Suddenly his body trembled. He never thought that there would be such a vast spirit qi in this small spirit stone. How could a high-grade spirit stone compare to it? It was really incredible. Wu Sihai retracted his divine sense and opened his eyes. He shouted in surprise, this is really a good thing. I didn't expect to see a supreme-grade spirit stone in my lifetime. How lucky. The surrounding people all stared at the purple stone intently. Their faces were full of amazement. With such an evaluation from him, there was no doubt that it was a real supreme-grade spirit stone. This was a rare good thing. Today was really an eye-opener. Wu Sihai rubbed it for a while, and was still amazed. Then, he handed the supreme-grade spirit stone to the elder and said, you take it and inspect it too. See if I made a mistake. Mistake my A**s. I personally dug a lot of it back then. How can it be fake? Yu Qianqiu looked at the reaction of these people with a smile, and didn't say anything. No, what you said is true. Naturally, it can't be fake. The elder said politely. However, he still couldn't help but take the spirit stone and admire it. After confirming that there was no mistake, he held it with both hands and handed it back. Wu Sihai waved his hand and said, this kind of opportunity is rare. Let the disciples here see it, and broaden their horizons. Then, the purple spirit stone began to circulate in the hands of the Wu family's disciples. Wu Sihai smiled at Yu Qianqiu and said, I've let Mr. see a joke. It's because my Wu family relies on eyesight. I really don't want to miss this opportunity to broaden my horizons. I understand. Yu Qianqiu nodded and smiled. Then can I pay with the supreme-grade spirit stone? Of course. Wu Sihai said happily. Then he frowned and said, there is something that this old man wants to clarify with Mr. This supreme-grade spirit stone is not in circulation in the market now. The specific valuation is also hard to say. However, according to the old legend, a supreme-grade spirit stone can be exchanged for 10,000 high-grade spirit stones. Therefore, Mr. needs to take out 30 supreme-grade spirit stones for 300,000 high-grade spirit stones. Of course, this old man also believes that the value of a supreme-grade spirit stone is definitely more than 10,000 high-grade spirit stones. However, I'm afraid the seller will not agree. Please forgive me, Mr. Chapter 191. Understood. Yu Qianqiu walked to a table, took out 2 purple spirit stones, and put them on the table. He turned around and smiled. Including that one, there are 30 spirit stones in total. You guys check it. The elder quickly walked over and smoothed out the small pile of sparkling purple spirit stones. After checking, he said with surprise, "Not bad, not a single one is missing." Wu Sihai nodded and smiled at Yu Qianqiu. "Mr. is willing to pay such a high price. You must have confirmed that this is a vermilion bird's egg. My Wu family relies on eyesight. This old man's eyesight is poor, so I would like to ask Mr. to teach me a thing or two on how to identify this item. I wonder if Mr. can enlighten me? Is this really a vermilion bird's egg? You've asked the wrong person for me to teach you a thing or two. Who the hell knows what this is? I just promised a friend that I would give the first item of the day to her." Yu Qianqiu's expression, which was hidden under the black cloth, was also twitching. This gift was enough to make his heart ache. Hearing this, everyone was speechless. Wu Sihai squeezed out a smile and said, "Mr. is really generous. By the way, mister, do you want to take this item now or after the auction is over? Leave it here first. Let me see if there are any other good items later." Yu Qianqiu said. Wu Sihai waved his hand, and a disciple handed over a plate with the word "one" written on it. Yu Qianqiu took the plate without asking anything. He had heard this rule from Wu Liqing a long time ago. After paying for the item that was not yet claimed could be handed over to the auction house for safekeeping. At the same time, the auction house would hand over a plate that was arranged according to the item's serial number to the buyer. The buyer could not only claim the item after the auction, but also raise the plate to bid during the auction. Yu Qianqiu bid for item number 1, so the plate was 1. "You too. Escort Mr. back to the auction house, and tell Elder Wu Tai to continue the auction," Wu Sihai said to the 2 disciples. "Thank you," Yu Qianqiu said courteously, and followed the 2 disciples who had been leading the way respectfully back to Wu Lishue's side. The other people present also realized that something was wrong. When this person entered, he was led by a disciple. He stayed for a long time, but when he came out, he was led by 2 disciples. Looking at the expressions of the 2 disciples, they seemed to be abnormally respectful. Could it be that something happened in between? Everyone was trying to figure out Yu Qianqiu's identity. Yu Qianqiu sat there and thought about the old man just now. The smile under the black cloth was a little wider. He chuckled in his heart. To be able to make the Wu clan's elder so respectful. If you aren't the Wu clan's patriarch, Wu Sihai, who else could it be? I don't believe you don't know who I am. I hope that the best spirit stones I've given you for the first time can make you understand some principles. Don't waste my effort. He really took out 300,000 high-grade spirit stones. Bai Zitsong and the rest looked at him again and again. Ever since they got to know him, they realized that he was getting more and more generous. But sometimes he was very stingy. He would take advantage of the slightest things. It could be seen from the few times he tried to freeload off Yan Juexing. Wu Lishue's heart was racing. It was the first time in her life that someone gave her such an expensive gift. She didn't even dare to look at him now. Wu Sihai, who was backstage, looked at the sparkling purple stones on the table and fell into deep thought. This kind of extinct item was actually used as money today. What exactly was this Yu Qianqiu's background? From his tone, it seemed like he didn't care about these supreme-grade spirit stones at all. This meant that he had more than just these supreme-grade spirit stones. Li Qing seemed to have mentioned that those black-clothed men didn't even put Fuxian Island in their eyes. Their background was deep. It seemed like there were still unknown and powerful forces in this world. Elder Wu Lei. Wu Sihai came back to his senses and shouted. The one who shouted was the elder from before. Clan head. Wu Lei came over. Wu Sihai pointed at the purple spirit stones on the table and said, "Our Wu clan will keep these supreme-grade spirit stones and store them in the storehouse. 300,000 high-grade spirit stones. After deducting the commission, prepare it for the seller." Wu Lei took a glance at the purple spirit stones on the table and cupped his hands with delight. Clan head is wise. It should be so. I will go and prepare it now. As he spoke, he swept the items on the table into the storage bag. 2 clansmen who were beaming with joy followed. They were also members of the Wu clan, and they were naturally happy that the Wu clan was able to obtain benefits. On the stage, 2 Wu clan's clansmen walked out. One of them was holding a tray while the other took out 2 golden bracelets to show to everyone. Yu Qianqiu felt that this item was rather familiar. The second auction item is a mid-grade peak-grade defensive artifact, a pair of Vajra barriers. There are a total of 2 of them. The starting price is 20,000 high-grade spirit stones, and the highest bidder will win it. The minimum increment must not be less than 1,000 high-grade spirit stones. Everyone please bid. Wu Tai announced happily. Today's auction had a good start, and he was in a rather good mood. So it was the Vajra bracelets. No wonder it looked familiar. Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself. 20,000. Someone had already started to bid. 21,000. 22,000. 23,000. Subsequently, there were people who kept on bidding. It was obvious that this item was much more attractive and practical than that bullsh *T vermilion bird egg in everyone's eyes. It was also much more practical. Furthermore, those who were able to participate in the auction and bid were mostly the representatives of the righteous and evil sections. There were also some hidden tycoons in the cultivation world. They were all wealthy people, and as long as they felt that something was worth making a move, they wouldn't be stingy. Every time someone called out a price, Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but turn his head to look. Such a grand auction would only be held once every 5 years, and it would gather all the treasures that certain sellers had collected over the years. He believed that the supporting Immortal Island would definitely send someone over, but he didn't know who it was. Also, the 4 major clans would definitely send someone over. When they saw that Yu Qianqiu was constantly looking around, they didn't know what he was trying to do. When the price reached 30,000, Yu Qianqiu suddenly raised the paddle in his hand and shouted, 60,000. The few of them were startled and wanted to ask, "Boss, what are you doing?" The entire crowd was in an uproar. This fellow was going crazy again. Wu Tai's eyes lit up as he waved his hand and shouted. Earlier on, the owner of auction item number 1 bid 60,000. Number 1 bid 60,000. Anyone else? Wu Tai simply loved this fellow to death. If there were a few more buyers like him, the Wu clan would definitely make a fortune. 60,000. 62,000. 63,000. There were still people who continued to raise the price. Such a defensive artifact was an item that could save one's life during a crucial moment. Furthermore, there were 2 of them, and it meant that it could save one's life twice. Such a price was still acceptable, but after Yu Qianqiu interfered, the rising and falling bids instantly decreased by half. Some of them were already cursing in their hearts, as they had never seen anyone bidding like this. This fellow was either a lunatic or someone from the Wu clan. 70,000. When the price reached 70,000, everyone looked at Yu Qianqiu, who didn't make another sound after shouting. They didn't know if this lunatic was going to flip out again. As expected, Yu Qianqiu didn't disappoint everyone as he raised the paddle in his hand and said, 140,000. Damn it. If you have the capability, then bid for all the items today. There were already people who couldn't help but curse. Wu Tai didn't care about this and shouted happily, 140,000. Number 1 buyer has already bid 140,000. Are there any more bids? Everyone pondered in their hearts and shook their heads silently. This pair of Vajra bracelets might be a life-saving item, but it was only a middle-grade artifact. If they were to encounter an expert who was at the middle stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm and above, it wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. The price of 100,000 high-grade spirit stones was already a sky-high price. With such a price in some face, it was entirely possible to request a blacksmith expert to refine a pair of bracelets. It wouldn't be wise to continue bidding. I bid 150,000. Everyone was shocked as there was still someone else bidding. They turned to look and saw that it was the person who had just shouted angrily. Everyone then looked at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu was resting with his eyes closed, and there was no sound. This gentleman has already bid 150,000. Are there any more bids? Wu Tai looked around and smiled. Seeing that there was no response, he asked Yu Qianqiu, Number 1 buyer, do you still want to bid? Damn it. Do you really think I'm a fool? Although I'm not that good at blacksmithing, at least I know the ropes. Can't I just casually shout for fun? Otherwise, it'll be so boring sitting here. Yu Qianqiu sneered in his heart. Who asked you to scold me? He opened his eyes and shook his head at Wu Tai, indicating that he didn't want it anymore. Wow. He doesn't want it anymore. Wow. No way. The crowd was boiling. Finally, someone was scammed. Chapter 192. The person who scolded him stood up and froze on the spot. He would be scolded to death by the sect if he paid 150,000 high-grade spirit stones for a pair of King Kong bracelets. Now that he thought about it, it was because everyone was silent, and he couldn't stand that person's arrogance. He wanted to make that person pay more. Wasn't he rich? Who knew that he would stop after 2 rounds of bidding? Wasn't this a scam? Everyone looked at him with pity. He also looked around, hoping that someone else would bid a higher price. Even if it was 1,000 high-grade spirit stones, it would be enough. Unfortunately, no one took action to sympathize with him. In the end, his pleading gaze fell on Yu Qianqiu. The latter turned his head to look at him, sneered, and turned his head back. Bai Zizong and the others were speechless. This was too immoral. If people knew who you were, they would fight you to the death. Looking at Yu Qianqiu, the few of them looked at the person standing there with deep sympathy. No one else wants to bid? Wu Tai looked at Yu Qianqiu with regret. However, it was not easy for a pair of King Kong bracelets to be sold at such a price. He happily said, a pair of King Kong bracelets, a top-notch mid-grade defense artifact. 150,000 high-grade spirit stones belongs to this gentleman. Clap clap. Yu Qianqiu clapped subconsciously, because his mind was filled with thoughts from his past life. Everyone was affected by the atmosphere and clapped together. Although they didn't know what it meant, they felt that they couldn't vent their emotions if they didn't clap. Finally, someone was scammed. Clapping was a good way to express one's feelings. Clap clap. The applause was warm. No one knew if it was to congratulate that guy for winning the bid or to mock him. Unfortunately, no one could see the exciting expression on that person's face. With so many people gathered, it was inevitable that there would be some people cheering. The applause was really overwhelming. However, the one who applauded the most sincerely was Wu Tai on the stage. The happiest person at this moment, other than the seller, was him. The Wu family had earned a fortune again. Wu Lixue widened her eyes and looked curiously at Yu Qianqiu, who was applauding. Then she looked around. She didn't understand how such a small action could have such a big impact. So many people in black suits couldn't possibly know him, right? Why were they cheering in front of him? This silly girl didn't know that some things did not require words. Everyone cared about feelings. Since it felt good, everyone naturally followed suit. Besides, they wouldn't lose anything by clapping, and they weren't the ones paying. Yu Qianqiu wanted to whistle, but it was really inconvenient with the black cloth covering his mouth. However, he didn't expect that a casual slap would cause such a huge reaction. It could be seen how boring the life of the people in this era was. A Wu clan's disciple walked to that person's side and respectfully invited him to the backstage to settle the bill. That person suddenly roared, "I'm not going." That person must be the Wu clan sponsor for this auction. Which of the people who were speaking here didn't use a fake voice? Naturally, they were afraid that someone would be tempted to betray them after seeing the money. However, this fellow actually reverted back to his original appearance in a moment of anger. Many people immediately guessed his origin. That Wu clan's disciple was startled and turned around to look at Wu Tai, who was hosting the auction. Wu Tai's expression immediately turned dark and said, "This mister, please be careful with your words. Anyone can do this auction, and my Wu clan's auction house is able to stand out in the cultivation world because of our reputation. I, Wu Tai, swear to the heavens that if this number 1 buyer is my Wu clan's agent, I, Wu Tai, will die a horrible death. Since I have said all that, I will have to ask this mister to come to the backstage to settle the bill. If you are really short of money, my Wu clan won't force you. However, according to the rules, you have to remove your outerwear and let everyone see your true appearance. After that, my Wu clan will naturally arrange for this pair of Vajra bracelets to continue the auction." Wu Tai's tone had traces of chilling intent towards the end. Just as he finished speaking, A few people flashed out from the backstage and leaped to that person's side. They were prepared to forcefully remove that person's outerwear at any moment. In fact, many people were suspecting that the number one buyer was the Wu clan's agent. Now that they saw Wu Tai swearing, their doubts were instantly gone. They all looked at that person and sneered in their hearts. Was this auction a place where one could act impulsively? If he really didn't settle the bill, once his appearance was revealed, the entire sect would be humiliated. If he had the money, he might as well settle the bill straightforwardly. A few people immediately stood beside that person and were constantly on guard against the Wu clan's members. With a single glance, it was obvious that the Wu clan's members were from the same sect as that person. It was extremely rare for someone to come to such an auction alone. Meanwhile, that person was trembling with anger, but there was no other choice. The situation was stronger than the person who was going to use force. The few of them couldn't defeat the Wu clan, and this was the Wu clan's territory after all. How could there be no experts in such a grand auction? There might be a late-stage tribulation transcendence expert somewhere. Furthermore, it was because he was impulsive and was unreasonable first. Ultimately, he raised his hand to stop the few people beside him and went backstage under the coercion of the Wu clan's members. When he came out, he had the number 2 auction token in his hand. It seemed like he still had the money to settle the bill. However, it made sense. Those who were able to participate in this auction were all prepared to pick treasures that they fancied. This was a place to compete in money. If one didn't bring a few $100,000, how could they buy a treasure? It was just a matter of whether the money in the storage bag was their own or the sect's. A small interlude passed just like that, and the auction continued. A Wu clan's member carried a small leather bag out. Everyone was very confused. What kind of treasure was this? It was actually stored in a leather bag. The Wu clan's member opened the bag in front of the stage and reached in with his hand. He grabbed a handful of things and loosened his fist slightly. Dazzling yellow sand fell from his palm into the bag. Immediately, someone gasped and cried out involuntarily, "Mystic gold sand." Wu Tai clapped and laughed. Not bad. It is mystic gold sand. It seems like those who are able to participate in this auction are all experts. I believe everyone knows that mystic gold sand is an essential ingredient in refining magic treasures. Even if a little bit of mystic gold sand is mixed in with normal mystic iron, the flying sword refined may not be comparable to a magic treasure, but it is still a top-notch high-grade magic treasure. This bag has a total of 20 kilograms of mystic gold sand. This is also the first time I have seen so much mystic gold sand. I believe that among all of you, there aren't many who have seen so much mystic gold sand at once, right? This small bag has 20 kilograms. Are you sure? Someone was suspicious, but he immediately waved his hand apologetically at the crowd. He immediately understood that mystic gold sand might look light, but it was a very heavy item. This small bag was probably no less than 20 kilograms. Moreover, the Wu clan auction house's reputation for so many years was not just for show. Naturally, it couldn't be faked. Many people who were originally leaning on their chairs straightened their bodies when they heard that there was 20 kilograms of mystic gold sand. These people were probably the true representatives of the big sections. The previous 2 items clearly couldn't move them, but now they were really a little interested. One had to know that every 50 grams of mystic gold sand, mixed in with mystic iron, could be refined into a high-grade magic treasure flying sword. This 20 kilograms could be refined into 200 swords. For a big sect, it was enough to increase the strength of 200 disciples by quite a bit. This was quite attractive. Yu Qianqiu's eyes also lit up. Ever since the last battle at the Yu residence, the 100 flying swords were shattered into pieces. It was simply a nightmare for him. If it wasn't for Bai Suzhen and the King Kong bracelet, he might have already said goodbye to this world. It was also because he had personally witnessed the 2 failures of the King Kong bracelet that he lost interest in the last round of the auction. After bidding twice, he didn't bid anymore. Spending money on something that wasn't safe wasn't worth it. The first time was naturally when he killed a disciple of the cultivation pavilion. The second time, the King Kong bracelet was simply destroyed. If he had these 20 kilograms of mystic gold sand, things would naturally be different. He was also a person who knew a bit about refining. If he encountered a situation like the last time, with 100 high-grade magic treasure flying swords in his hands, no matter how bad it was, he wouldn't be able to shatter them all. At least it would give him a chance to save his life. Moreover, with these high-grade magic treasure flying swords, the power of the good yuan sword technique would be greatly increased. Good stuff. I just need it. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the disinterested Wu Lixue and smiled as he handed over the sign in his hand. He said softly, "I'll bid you help me raise the sign." Wu Lixue obediently took the sign and nodded. She thought raising the sign would be easy, but she didn't know how much pressure she would have to face. This was not a game that a small amount of money could afford to play. Bai Zizong and the others rolled their eyes. This girl shouldn't be like this. We've known each other since we were young, and we've never seen her so obedient before. Today, she met someone she's only known for 2 days, and she's already so obedient. What a sin! Wu Tai saw the restless reactions of the people below. He smiled slightly. If the big shots of the righteous and demon sects didn't make a move, then this auction would be very boring. He pointed at the mystic gold sand and said loudly, 20 kilograms of mystic gold sand. The starting price is 500,000 high-grade spiritual stones. The highest bidder wins. The minimum bid must be no less than 10,000 high-grade spiritual stones. Please bid. Chapter 193. 20 kilograms of mystic gold sand for 500,000 high-grade spirit stones? There was a brief silence below the stage, and everyone started to calculate in their hearts. 20 kilograms of mystic gold sand could be used to refine 200 high-grade flying swords. Of course, this was under the condition that all of them were successful. But basically, there was not much of a problem. They just needed to mix in the black iron and refine it, not to refine a magic weapon. The market price of a high-grade flying sword was about 3,000 high-grade spirit stones. 200 of them were worth 600,000 high-grade spirit stones. Excluding the price of the black iron and other materials, this starting price of 500,000 was indeed a bit expensive. But in terms of the quantity, it was completely worth it. Moreover, compared to the improvement of the strength of 200 disciples, it was very promising. 500,000. Yu Qianqiu waited for a long time. Seeing that these guys did not respond, he had to test the waters first. Wu Lixue raised the sign in her hand. Before she raised it, she did not even look at Yu Qianqiu and smiled foolishly. Although that face was blocked, Yu Qianqiu could still see from her eyes that she was smiling foolishly, showing off a bit. Wu Sihai, who was in the dark room, was slightly startled. He did not expect Yu Qianqiu to call the price first. When he looked outside, he suddenly did not know whether to laugh or cry. Yu Qianqiu slumped lazily on the chair. Wu Lixue, who was beside him, raised the sign high. Although he could not see her expression, he knew this granddaughter too well. Looking at her movements, he knew that she must be very proud at this time. There was a solution. He was afraid that this girl was a bit interested in Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu turned his head to both sides. Seeing that no one responded, he shouted towards the stage. Since no one responded, Elder Wu, what are you waiting for? You should announce that this mystic gold sand is mine, right? Wu Lixue put down the sign and nodded heavily. Wu Tai smiled awkwardly at him. You wish. How could no one want this thing? He said in a clear voice. Is there anyone else to bid? The number one buyer has already bid 500,000. After shouting once, there was still no response from below. Wu Tai's expression suddenly twitched a little. Could it be that no one responded? Yu Qianqiu stood up, turned around and looked around. Those who had wanted to raise the price didn't dare to speak after being stared at like that. Yu Qianqiu looked around in confusion. Strange, no one is bidding for this item? That's impossible, right? Buyer number one has bid 500,000 upper spiritual stones. Are there any other bids? Wu Tai shouted again. There was an indescribable expression on his face. In short, he was very embarrassed. He had hosted an auction for so many years, But this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. Yu Qianqiu slowly turned around, stared at Wu Tai on the stage, and said in a solemn voice, "Elder Wu, you can announce the results already, right?" Wu Tai smiled apologetically at him and shouted for the third time, "Is there anyone else who wants to increase the price? Buyer number 1 has already bid 500,000 high-grade spiritual stones. If you want to increase the price, please be quick." According to the rules, he was allowed to shout 3 times for a single bidding result. However, it was useless to shout. There were a few who clearly wanted to bid, but they actually leaned back on their chairs and pretended that they didn't hear anything. After shouting 3 times, there was actually no response. If he waited any longer, he would be violating the rules. Wu Tai's voice trembled as he announced, 20 kilograms of mystic gold sand. Buyer number 1 has obtained it with the base price of 500,000 high-grade spiritual stones. The audience was in absolute silence. Many people were looking around and didn't know what was going on. In the dark room, Wu Sihai's expression was also twitching. This was the first time he encountered such a situation, and it was as though he had seen a ghost. Bai Zizong and the others were even more flabbergasted. How could such a thing happen? Right now, there was only one person who felt the most uncomfortable. After watching the entire auction, he was trembling in anger in a secret room behind everyone. He was the owner of the 20 kilograms of mystic gold sand, and he didn't expect such a thing to happen. He let out a sorrowful sigh. If he knew this would happen, he would have followed the Wu clan's pricing and set it at 400,000 high-grade spiritual stones. If he wasn't careful, the price might have been raised to more than 500,000. However, he was too greedy and insisted on setting it at 500,000 high-grade spiritual stones. In the end, he shot himself in the foot. Wu Lixue, who was addicted to the auction for the first time, was extremely excited. She didn't think that she would be able to win the bid in one go, and didn't waste a single spirit stone from Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu took a glance at her and thought, strange. I encountered an item that I sincerely bid for, but no one is bidding? Could this girl really be my lucky star? Before he could think any further, a Wu clan's disciple had already invited him to the backstage. After he left, almost everyone was pondering what was going on and couldn't figure it out. Some people were even thinking, could everyone be thinking the same thing as me? In fact, there were plenty of people who wanted to bid for this round, especially the righteous and evil sections. Just as they were considering, Yu Qianqiu suddenly called out a price. When those people saw that it was this lunatic again, they couldn't help but ponder deeply. It seemed like this fellow wanted to participate in every round. It was obvious that he was a fellow with deep financial resources. Otherwise, who would dare to play like him? As long as this guy opened his mouth, if he guessed correctly, he would either fight to the end and win in one go, or he would raise the price so high that it would be hard for him to swallow. The previous 2 rounds were a lesson to be learned from. After thinking about it carefully, this mystic gold sand's base price was also very high. If one wanted to refine a high-grade flying sword, instead of spending 500,000 high-grade spirit stones, one might as well add another 100,000 and slowly purchase it in the cultivation world. It shouldn't be a problem to purchase one with 3,000 high-grade spirit stones, and they could even get 200 of them. Why was there a need to bid without any confidence? Even if one was able to purchase it and refine it into a magic artifact, putting aside the need to have a cultivator who could refine the magic artifact, even if there was who could guarantee that all the refinement would be successful. Refining a magic artifact was different from a magic artifact. With the current refinement standard of the cultivation world, the failure rate wouldn't be low. However, this wasn't the most important point. The key point was, would this madman let you bid for it so smoothly? What's more, in the 3rd round, there was already 10 kilograms of mystic gold sand. Presumably, the things later on would be even more incredible. If you spent a lot of money on this madman, and encountered something you wanted later on, you could only stare helplessly. You couldn't possibly stop the auction and wait for you to go back to the sect to get your spirit stones. Some of the more powerful ones were still preparing to bid. However, at this time, they suddenly saw Yu Qianqiu standing up and sweeping his gaze back and forth. After a careful look, these people who wanted to bid were all shocked. Who was this person? They actually couldn't see through his cultivation. Among them, there were a few people whose cultivation had already reached the middle stage of crossing tribulation. After they saw clearly, they were even more shocked. Even they couldn't see through his cultivation. There was actually a cultivator in the late stage of crossing tribulation who came to join in the fun. When this person came out from the backstage during the first round, the Wu clan actually sent 2 disciples to send him off. Furthermore, they even sat in the first row. The Wu clan must have known that this person's identity was extraordinary, which was why they did this. In addition to the previous considerations, they felt that there was really no need to compete with this person at this time. If they angered this person, who could guarantee that he wouldn't be able to find out who was going against him in the future? Would he look for trouble with them? It wouldn't be too late to compete when there was a really good item. At least it would be worth it. As for the other small sects, when they saw that the number 1 buyer actually wanted to buy the mystic gold sand at the base price, they indeed wanted to join in. Even if they couldn't buy it, they would feel comfortable raising the price. However, when they thought about how they were short of money, and how this guy didn't act according to common sense, what if they called out a price, and the other party gave it to them? What should they do? Were they really going to let the Wu clan take off their clothes and show their faces in front of everyone? A lot of coincidences happened at the same time. In addition, Yu Qianqiu was filled with strangeness. As a result, no matter how hard they thought, they couldn't figure out why there was actually a situation where the mystic gold sand was bought at the base price. In the end, when the announcement was made, there were indeed people who regretted it. If they had known earlier, they would have just casually added a point to try. It would be too vexing to let someone buy it just like that. But who knew that everyone wouldn't bid for it? Chapter 194. Congratulations to Mr. for purchasing the mystic gold sand at the base price. Wu Zihai walked out and congratulated Yu Qianqiu, who was settling the bill. This is truly a joyous occasion. I was originally prepared to take out at least 3 million, but who knew that no one followed the price? This is truly strange. Sigh. I really can't figure it out. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed. 3 million. Wu Zihai smiled awkwardly. His Wu clan had lost 500,000 high-grade spirit stones for nothing because of this disturbance, and anyone would feel heartache. The Wu clan's descendants at the side were truly speechless. They really couldn't figure out how such a thing could happen. Logically speaking, with this troublemaker around, the price should be even higher. This really shouldn't be the case. Yu Qianqiu nimbly took out 50 pieces of supreme-grade spirit stones, which instantly dazzled everyone for a moment. After he returned, Martial Thunder held the pile of supreme-grade spirit stones and said with a bitter smile, "These originally belonged to us, but we can only take 10 pieces now. What happened to those people outside? I really can't figure it out." Sigh. Wu Zihai sighed and said, "Keep all the supreme-grade spirit stones. Prepare 400,000 high-grade spirit stones for the seller." The crowd watched as buyer number 1 staggered back. They all sighed in their hearts. This madman had picked up a bargain. Wu Tai, who was on the stage, couldn't help but take a few more glances at Yu Qianqiu. With a wave of his hand, the 4th auction item appeared. A Wu clan's descendant came out with a wooden tray that was covered with a red cloth. The middle of the tray was raised, and it was unknown what was covered. Another Wu clan's descendant reached out and opened it. It turned out to be a jade bottle that was as round as a child's fist, and as tall as half a chopstick. There was a faint green color inside. Wu Tai regained his smile and said, "The contents of this bottle should be a little interesting to everyone. There is about a cup of wood spirit fluid." Wood spirit fluid? This time many people exclaimed. Many of the elders who were leaning on their chairs immediately sat up straight, and their eyes were filled with splendor. When Yu Qianqiu heard the commotion, he turned around to take a look. Could this be another treasure? Wu Tai introduced, "I'm sure everyone knows that this wood spirit liquid is the essence of a spirit tree, with a lifespan of 10,000 years. A tree that has gained spirituality cannot become a spirit after cultivating for 10,000 years. If it continues to cultivate, it will definitely give back the essence of the world. When the sun rises and the moon sets, it will spit out 10 drops of wood spirit liquid every day. After a year, the essence will be spat out, and the tree will wither and die. Although the spirit tree is dead, the wood spirit liquid it spits out has a miraculous effect. Just a drop of it can help the spirit grass we grow in the cultivation world increase its growth rate by 100 times. It is truly miraculous. If any sect had any top-grade spirit grass, they would definitely know that this kind of spirit grass grew very slowly. Some needed a few years to mature, and some even needed decades or centuries before they bloomed and bore fruit. Even if they produced seeds, they would have to wait for many years. With this wood spirit liquid, a few hundred years old spirit grass could bloom and bear fruit in a day with just a few drops. Wu Tai observed everyone's reaction and smiled. All right, I won't say much more. The starting price of this item was originally 1 million upper-grade spirit stones. But due to the influence of the previous auction item, the seller specially came to our auction house and lowered the starting price to 800,000. The starting price of wood spirit liquid is 800,000 upper-grade spirit stones, and the highest bidder wins. The minimum bid cannot be lower than 50,000 upper-grade spirit stones. Please bid. Damn it. After talking for so long, I thought it was some kind of treasure. Isn't this thing the same effect as the purple chaos in Utopia? What use do I have for this damn thing? I can have as much purple chaos as I want, and I can use as much as I want. Furthermore, the starting price is 800,000. Giving it to me for free, I'll think it's a burden. Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself. He moved his body, and Wu Lishua's eyes instantly lit up. She tightly held onto the token in her hand, and as long as he shouted, she would immediately show it to everyone. She was a little addicted to playing, but Yu Qianqiu moved his body to lie down more comfortably. Wu Lishua looked at him anxiously, and was just short of pulling his ear and telling him, "Hey, don't fall asleep, this is a good item." The scene was surprisingly quiet, and even the sound of a pin dropping on the ground could be heard. Everyone's eyes were looking at buyer number 1, as they didn't know what kind of trick he was going to play. After waiting for a long time without any reaction, Wu Tai was a little anxious on the stage. He smiled embarrassedly and said, "For such a good item to appear here, it is truly a fated opportunity that can only be encountered and not sought for. Could it be that no one wants such a treasure?" Wu Tai was really a little afraid. In the previous round, an auction item was bought at the starting price, and this was something that had never happened in the Wu clan's grand auction that was held once every 5 years. Could it be that there was going to be an unsold item this time? This was too inconceivable, right? One had to know that the Wu clan had a huge business and a huge population. A single year's expenses were quite a lot, and the auction that was held once every 5 years was the time to earn a lot of money. If this carried on, the entire Wu clan would have no choice but to live off their capital. Putting aside this matter, such a matter was enough to strike the Wu clan's reputation, and they would definitely become the laughingstock of the cultivation world. Wu Tai took a deep breath, and he had made up his mind to never allow an unsold item to appear. As long as no one said anything, he wouldn't say anything either. Withdrawing the auction item was something that couldn't be done no matter what. Wu Liqing also couldn't sit still as this was related to his clan. When he saw everyone looking at Yu Qianqiu, he, who had been silent, pulled Yu Qianqiu and said, "You aren't even going to buy such a treasure?" Yu Qianqiu didn't even turn his head and said, "TSK, such a small bottle can be casually filled with anything, and it can be taken out as a treasure." The surroundings were originally quiet, and since everyone's cultivation wasn't that weak, they naturally heard what he said clearly. Everyone instantly felt like fainting. It felt like this fellow bought items according to the price. What a talent! Wu Liqing was almost choked by him to the point that he couldn't speak. He swallowed his saliva and said awkwardly, "Don't think that this bottle is small. The key is that the item inside is valuable. Right now, The base price is 800,000. If we were to sell it, we could at least double the price. Is that so? Yu Qianqiu struggled to stand up and looked at the people behind him with doubt. He thought, then why aren't they saying anything? Sigh. I really have no use for this item. Forget it. I will just treat it as giving Wu Liqing some face. After all, it wasn't a glorious matter for the Wu clan to have an unsold item. I will just treat it as spending money to do a favor. He nodded and said, I believe you. I will buy it. 800,000. Hearing this, Wu Lixue raised her paddle and looked at the people behind her with a proud expression. She didn't want to worry about the Wu clan right now, and she was looking forward to buying it herself. Those who knew that she was Wu Lixue and understood her temperament didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This silly girl was hopeless. Although this item was useless to Yu Qianqiu, it was very useful to other sects, especially those sects that had top-grade spiritual herbs. Even if the sects didn't have top-grade spiritual herbs, who could guarantee that they wouldn't encounter it in the future? With the wood spirit liquid, the big problem would be solved. This time, no one would be courteous to Yu Qianqiu. Just as Wu Lixue put down her paddle, the crowd instantly exploded. Someone immediately shouted, 900,000. Someone immediately increased the bid by 100,000. Following that, someone shouted, 1 million. 1,100,000. They all skipped the price difference of 50,000 and increased it by 100,000. When it reached 2 million, Wu Lixue couldn't sit still anymore. She kept looking at Yu Qianqiu as if she was asking, why aren't you shouting yet? Yu Qianqiu didn't plan to buy this item. Originally, he was bidding to give face to the Wu clan. Now that there was someone supporting him, it wasn't his business anymore. The people behind the Wu clan's front desk instantly let out a sigh of relief. They finally realized that it wasn't because the item wasn't good enough, but because they were waiting for Yu Qianqiu to ignite the fire. However, he clearly ignited the fire last round, so why didn't there be any reaction? This matter became a mystery that the Wu clan couldn't solve for many years. The grand auction that was held once every 5 years finally had the fiery scene it should have. The price of a bottle of with spiritual fluid kept rising. When the price reached 3 million, not to mention Wu Lixue, even Yu Qianqiu was a little tempted. He didn't expect this item to be so valuable, so he carefully considered whether he should join in the fun or not. However, when the price increased by 300,000, he immediately rejected it. Damn it! These guys are all pretending to be pigs to eat tigers. No matter how much money I have, I can't stop their fiery passion, even if I throw it down. The key is that this item is really useless to me. What's the use of buying it at a high price? I can't be impulsive. Impulsive is the devil. Therefore, he completely gave up this round. Wu Lixue pouted her little mouth under the black cloth. It was really boring to just watch others' excitement. When the price reached 6,900,000 high-grade spirit stones, the passion on the scene subsided. Finally, no one touched the red line of 7 million. It wasn't that they didn't want to touch it, but no matter how good the item was, when the price was so high that they couldn't afford it with their own strength, naturally, no one would touch it again. Everything had its value. Moreover, the items that came out later would definitely not be worse than this item. The people on the scene were all experienced people, and they wouldn't do things that were too impulsive. The item now belonged to its owner. Everyone suddenly realized that the first buyer only called out a price, and then there was no response after that. Those people from the small sects who were short of money in the previous round were scared out of their wits. Fortunately, they didn't use the spirit of brotherhood. This lunatic really did something like calling out a price. If they really called out 510,000 last time, and this guy didn't say anything, they would definitely be killed by him. This person couldn't be judged by common sense. Chapter 195. This round of bidding really shocked Yu Qianqiu. It wasn't that they couldn't afford the items in front, but they didn't like them. After all, they were using the government's money to do things, unlike him, who was using his own money to buy whatever he liked. And once they encountered something slightly better, they would madly bite it like mad dogs. This kind of financial resources was definitely not something that a small sect could come up with. It was estimated that only the righteous and demonic sects could afford such a price. Most of these sects had been around for thousands of years. Which one of them didn't have a few spirit stone mines under them? As for how much wealth they had accumulated, outsiders would not be able to figure it out. However, this gave Yu Qianqiu a wake-up call. If there was something good down there, and if it was something he wanted, he would have to pay a huge price. It would be impossible for him to take advantage of it. The fifth round of the auction began. It was still a tray covered with a red cloth. After a Wu clan's disciple removed the red cloth, there was a small wooden frame that was temporarily made on the tray. On it was a small bronze mirror that was the size of a palm. The bronze mirror was antique and had a light yellow color. The mirror in the middle was slightly protruding, and the periphery was carved with a circle of patterns. There were 2 thin ear holes on the top and a thin chain. It seemed to be something that could be hung in front of the chest. Everyone was pondering what kind of treasure it was. Even Yu Qianqiu was no exception. However, one thing was certain. According to the auction order, this item might be more valuable than the wood spirit liquid in the previous round. Similarly, if anyone wanted to buy it, they would probably have to pay a bigger price. Under everyone's waiting gaze, Wu Tai smiled and said, "Rumor has it that in ancient times, there was a master refiner known as Divine Craftsman. I believe many people have heard of him." As soon as this opening was said, the people below immediately held their breaths in concentration. Many people's pupils suddenly constricted, and they stared at the small bronze mirror again, carefully sizing it up. Wu Tai took out the bronze mirror from the plate, pulled up the thin chain, and turned the back of the bronze mirror to face everyone. He continued, "It is said that this divine craftsman would leave his name on every treasure he refined, Mo-Ru-Chi. Everyone knows that in ancient times, the whole world was in chaos. Demons and ghosts could run amok in the human world. At that time, the human world also had many geniuses to fight against the demons and ghosts. Many amazing legends were left behind, which made us, the younger generation, fascinated. It is also because of those talented seniors that our cultivation world has today's peace." Presumably, many people knew that it was at that time that the divine craftsman forged a demon-revealing mirror and hung it on his chest to identify those demons that were wreaking havoc. "The bronze mirror in my hand is the demon-revealing mirror." As he spoke, he displayed the bronze mirror in his hand to the surroundings. Everyone looked at it with rapt attention. Sure enough, there were 3 ancient words carved on the back of the bronze mirror. "Nothing is better than a weapon." They all gasped. There was actually an ancient treasure that had been passed down to the present. They just didn't know if it was real or fake. Immediately someone shouted, "Elder Wu, is your Wu clan really sure that this is the demon-revealing mirror of the ancient divine craftsman?" Hearing that, Wu Tai put the bronze mirror back on the plate and smiled at everyone. "My Wu clan doesn't dare to boast that we can appraise an ancient treasure, but this item is definitely the demon-revealing mirror. Of course, it's not enough to determine it just from the divine craftsman's carvings on the back. Because of this, my Wu clan once brought this item into the periphery of the demon-ghost region. In the end, all the demons and ghosts were revealed in this mirror. That's why I dare to say that this item is the demon-revealing mirror. As for whether this item really came from the hands of a divine craftsman, or if it's an imitation, my Wu clan can't be sure. However, I want to ask everyone since ancient times, who has heard of a second demon-revealing mirror? Hey, I've never heard of it. Tell me." Yu Qianqiu pulled Wu Liqing. When he was in Angquangsung, he didn't fit in with the group. When he was in Fuxian Island, he only thought about doing private work. He rarely talked nonsense with his fellow sect members, so he was really clueless about all kinds of illusions. Wu Liqing whispered into his ear, and the 2 of them started whispering. Everyone thought about it carefully and shook their heads secretly. They really hadn't heard of it. For a moment, the doubts in most people's hearts disappeared, and they revealed an indescribable expression. An ancient treasure was actually going to appear in this auction, and it was the work of a divine craftsman. This was really a dilemma for everyone. Why was it difficult to choose? This item was the handiwork of an ancient divine craftsman, so it could naturally be considered a treasure. However, according to the current classification of treasures, what level of treasure should this demon-revealing mirror be? At most, it was a magic tool. It couldn't even be considered a magic treasure, let alone a spiritual treasure. Because this item couldn't attack or defend, it didn't have any practical value. Did they have nothing better to do than to look for demons to mirror it? Moreover, demons had disappeared without a trace, so it was really difficult to find one. They couldn't possibly run to the demon domain and copy it, right? If they really did that, they would probably be guests of the demons, and they would never be able to come back. Moreover, if this item was put up for auction now, the price would definitely not be low. It was really not worth it to spend a lot of money on this item. Who knew what other things would appear later? However, they couldn't not bid for this useless item, especially when it was from the big sects of the righteous and demon sects. The handiwork of an ancient divine craftsman, and a treasure that had left its name in history, would be a gimmick in any sect, even though it was useless. Moreover, which sect didn't have an old man who could refine weapons? It was just a matter of skill. If they found out that they had missed out on a treasure made by a divine craftsman, they would probably be in trouble in the future. They would definitely say that after studying the treasure of a divine craftsman, they would definitely be able to greatly improve their refining skills in the future. Then they would make fun of them. Sigh. They had to bid for it. But the key was to have a sense of propriety. Everyone looked at the demon-revealing mirror and smiled bitterly. How did this thing come out? After listening to Wu Liqing's introduction, Yu Qianqiu was shocked. This broken mirror could actually reflect demons of any cultivation level. Didn't that mean that it could even reflect Bai Suzhen? His heart was a little heavy. In his heart, he had already treated Bai Suzhen as a family member. Regardless of whether she was a demon or not, she was still his most trusted family member. He hated it when people mentioned that Bai Suzhen was a vixen. Even Xu Pinger had been heavily criticized by him because of this. Because he wanted Bai Suzhen to live a normal life. Because she was a woman who could let him completely relax. That's right. She was a woman, not a demon. At least in his heart, that was the case. Fortunately, this demon-revealing mirror was a one-of-a-kind item. Therefore, he had to purchase this item at all costs. It wasn't for anything else, but because this woman couldn't be slandered by anyone. Yu Qianqiu's eyes gradually narrowed as he stared at the demon-revealing mirror on the stage. Wu Lixue held the sign in her hand and constantly sized up Yu Qianqiu. She was a little restless again, as the feeling of snatching something from others was too satisfying. However, she was afraid that Yu Qianqiu would disappoint her again. After all, the money belonged to him, and she couldn't simply raise a sign for him, right? Wu Tai looked below the stage with a beaming smile and said, "Demon-revealing mirror, the base price is 1.5 million high-grade spirit stones. The highest bidder will win. Each increment must not be lower than 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. Will all the buyers please bid?" Most of the people below the stage were cursing the Wu clan's ancestors in their hearts. The Wu clan had arranged for the demon-revealing mirror to appear at this moment. It was obvious that they had seen through everyone's thoughts. It would be hard to explain if they didn't bid for such a useless treasure. Bid, right? This base price wasn't low, but it wasn't very high either. It was truly unbearable to swallow. Just as everyone was dealing with the Wu clan's ancestors in their hearts, Yu Qianqiu called out, 2 million. Chapter 196. Wu Lixue had been looking forward to it for a long time. When she heard the man beside her bid, she raised the paddle in her hand. He bid 2 million? Did I hear it wrong? Wasn't it the base price of 1.5 million? Wu Lixue looked over anxiously and saw Yu Qianqiu leaning on the chair with his eyes closed. She immediately panicked and thought she heard it wrong. This was 2 million. She didn't have the money to accompany him, so she looked at her brother next door. The latter could not be said to not understand his younger sister's thoughts, so he nodded slightly at her. Wu Lixue heaved a sigh of relief and smiled like a flower. Unfortunately, no one saw it. Wu Sihai, who was in the dark room beside the stage, shook his head and smiled bitterly. Good. Buyer number 1 has bid 2 million. Is there anyone who wants to increase the price? Wu Tai immediately became excited and shouted to the audience. There was a slight chill in the audience, and they all looked at buyer number 1. They didn't know what this madman was up to. Every time he called out a price, it was different. Who would directly jump over the base price and add 500,000 on the first bid? Was he trying to cheat people again? The reaction of the audience stunned Wu Tai. He thought to himself, I won't let buyer number 1 win again, right? However, the reaction of the audience made him heave a sigh of relief. Someone shouted, 1 million. Before anyone else could speak, Yu Qianqiu shouted without even opening his eyes. 3 million. He had to get this item, so there was no need to be long-winded. Wu Lixue, the obedient child, was naturally very cooperative. She raised the paddle in her hand high again. The audience, which had just become lively, immediately quieted down. After a moment of silence, someone shouted, 3,100,000. 4 million. Yu Qianqiu still didn't open his eyes. Wu Lixue raised the paddle again. This time, the audience was silent for a long time. They were all guessing whether buyer number 1 really wanted to buy it, or was he trying to scam others. They didn't know which sect this person was from. But his wealth wasn't weak. Could he be from Supporting Immortal Island? Yes, he was a disciple of Supporting Immortal Island. But he didn't represent the island to bid. This was because the one representing Supporting Immortal Island was none other than Dongfang Chang'eo, who had been sent by Feng Xiangtian to deal with the dispute with Daluo sect. Originally, this auction was represented by Supporting Immortal Island's shop manager, Wan Yuan. However, after Dongfang Chang'eo came, Wan Yuan was happy to give up this thankless task and respectfully gave the representative to Dongfang Chang'eo. At this time, Dongfang Changgao was also guessing which sect the first buyer was from. Could it be the Myriad Demon Palace? Someone from 10,000 Demons also guessed that buyer number 1 was from Supporting Immortal Island. Dongfang Chang'eo thought about what Elder Mo of the Artifact Forging Pavilion had told him before he came, telling him to buy anything that could help him improve his artifact forging, and he could not help but feel a headache. Other items were fine, but Divine Craftsman Mo Rookie had the same surname as Elder Mo Rookie, was the person that Elder Mo admired the most. If Elder Mo didn't bid for this item, Elder Mo would definitely hate him for life. Logically speaking, it was fine to use the sect's money to do a favor, but the key was that this mysterious buyer number 1 seemed to be making trouble again. If he spent a lot of money on this useless treasure, what would he do if there were other good things in the future? Elder Mo was naturally happy that he had bought it. The sect was willing to lend him such a thing for research. How would the sect master and the other elders look at him? Of course, Myriad Fragrance Gardens Elder Fei wouldn't say anything, because he was the one who bought the wood spirit fluid earlier. He was buyer number 3. Buyer number 1 bids 4 million. Is there anyone else? Wu Tai looked around and felt a chill down his spine. He realized that as long as buyer number 1 intervened, the atmosphere of the auction would be a little off. The current price of the demon revealing mirror was far from the Wu clan's bottom line, and it shouldn't be so deserted. It seemed like buyer number 1's destructive power was too great. Dongfang Chang'eo thought about it and raised the number 3 plate. 1 million. 5 million. Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. After Wu Lixue raised the sign, she was slightly stunned. This gentle sentence of 5 million reminded her of something. It seemed that since she was a child, the most money she had ever received from her family was only 500 upper-level spirit stones. She clearly remembered that time when she spread out the spirit stones on the bed and rolled on it. These spirit stones allowed her to spend a lot of time and buy a lot of things. Now that she raised the plate in her hand, 5 million was gone? How much would 500 high-grade spirit stones be piled up by 10,000 times? Now that she thought about it, she suddenly had an intuitive concept of 5 million. She immediately felt that the plate in her hand was heavy, and she slowly put it down after raising it. She secretly glanced at Yu Qianqiu. This person is so rich. 1 million. Someone shouted before Dongfang Chang'eo could. This person was none other than the 10,000 demons' Qiu Wuyuan. Qiu Wuyuan was delighted in his heart and thought, between buyer number 1 and buyer number 3, one of them must be from supporting Immortal Island. I will help you raise the price. He heard that supporting Immortal Island and the Great Luo sect were in a mess, so he came over to watch the show. 6 million. Yu Qianqiu raised the price indifferently. His tone didn't have any fluctuations, and he seemed very calm. Wu Lixue bit her lips and raised the plate before putting it down. She wasn't as excited as before, and she felt as though she was injected with stimulants when she heard the price. Raise again. Raise again. Wu Tai's excited eyes swept across the three of them. He wasn't panicking when there were 3 people raising the price, and he couldn't be bothered to shout anymore. He was waiting for the 3 of them to decide the winner, and his Wu clan would collect the money. 1 million. Dongfang Chang. Ao let out a breath of relief after shouting this. This was his last bid, and if he couldn't buy it, he wouldn't do it anymore. It wasn't worth it for such an item to exceed 7 million, and it was useless for Elder Mo to blame him. After all, he would be the one reporting to the sect. 7 million. Yu Qianqiu, who seemed to have fallen asleep, raised the price again. Wu Lixue forcefully stabilized his mind and raised the plate. This was already the highest bid so far. 1 million. Qiu Wuyuan raised the price again. Yu Qianqiu's eyes widened abruptly. Damn it. Something isn't right. Someone is scamming me. There are 3 people bidding, and when I raise the price by 1 million, someone else will raise it by 100,000. When I raise it again, another person will raise it. If they really want to buy it, why must they follow behind me? Why can't the other 2 bid? Thinking of this, he purposely stopped shouting. He wanted to see if the other 2 would fight with each other. After waiting for a while, there was no response. Yu Qianqiu straightened his back and turned around to size up Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan. He sneered in his heart. Since they dare to scam me, none of them will have a good time in the following auctions. 5 out of the 10 items in the grand auction have been sold, and there are still 5 left. Hehe. Today, I might as well do the Wu clan a big favor. The 2 of them immediately noticed that Yu Qianqiu was looking at them with a gloomy gaze. Their hearts pounded, and they thought that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was higher than theirs. In fact, Dongfang Chang'ao was really wronged. 1 million was his last bid, and Qiu Wuyuan was the one who wanted to mess things up. However, Qiu Wuyuan wasn't any better. Seeing that the other 2 didn't respond after he shouted 1 million, he was stunned. Did I win the bid? Oh no. Why did I spend more than 7 million to buy this thing back? 7,200,000. Yu Qianqiu added 100,000, but it also helped Qiu Wuyuan out of his predicament. Wu Lixue's heart was pounding as he raised the paddle. He thought that Yu Qianqiu must be out of money. Most of the others thought the same. Other than the first round, buyer number 1 only needed to raise the price in the other rounds. When had he ever failed? Obviously, he was out of money. Naturally, Qiu Wuyuan wouldn't continue bidding. Firstly, the buyer was probably out of money. It would be hard for him to report back after spending more than 7 million to buy this thing. Secondly, the other party's gaze was obviously a warning. Since he didn't want it anymore, there was no need to offend such an expert. However, Yu Qianqiu obviously didn't appreciate his kindness. After Wu Tai regretfully announced that the demon-revealing mirror belonged to him, Yu Qianqiu went backstage. Just as he was about to step onto the stage, he turned around and looked at Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan meaningfully. However, the 2 of them didn't mind. Both of them were from the number 1 sects of the righteous and devil sections. Why would they be afraid of trouble? However, the 2 of them would find out later in the auction. In the cultivation world, not only supporting Immortals Island and 10,000 demons had rich people. Chapter 197. When he took out the 720 top-grade spirit stones, Yu Qianqiu still felt a little heartache. Although these were only a drop in the ocean compared to the amethyst palace that he had moved here, he still felt a little heartache. However, when he thought of Bai Suzhen, he felt much calmer. At the same time, he had exchanged these spirit stones for some items, so he wasn't giving them to the Wu clan for free. Moreover, wasn't showing off his strength to the 4 major clans something he wanted to do? Furthermore, the degree of showing off was obviously far from shocking enough. If that was the case, then he would have to perform a one-man show for the rest of the auction. After he returned to his seat, Bai Zizong and the rest looked at him again. They didn't expect him to bring so much money with him. It should be known that most of the people here were representing their sex, which was different from him, who came alone. How many people in the cultivation world could take out so much money privately? The 6th round of the auction began as expected. A Wu clan's disciple carried an object covered with a red cloth and placed it on the table on the stage. When the red cloth was removed, there was a cage inside. He then lifted the cage and gently rotated the entire cage. After that, the cage was lifted, revealing a flower pot connected to the bottom. A blood-red herb appeared in front of everyone's eyes, and there were even small white flowers on it. The people who were observing carefully suddenly smelled a faint smell of blood, and they were all shocked. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. This thing looked familiar, and he suddenly remembered something. He had seen it in the Dansex pill recipe Jade Archive. He couldn't help but exclaim, 7-star blood orchid. Bai Zizong and the rest were also stunned. He knew this thing. No one had seen this thing before, but it didn't mean that they hadn't heard of it. When they heard Yu Qianqiu's reminder, they all exclaimed, 7-star blood orchid. Wu Tai looked at Yu Qianqiu and smiled. Sir, you really have a good eye. This thing probably hasn't appeared in the cultivation world for thousands of years. I didn't expect you to recognize it as soon as it appeared. It is the 7-star blood orchid, which is very helpful for core-bearing stage cultivators to break through to the nascent soul stage. It grows 1 leaf every year, and it takes 100 years for it to bloom and bear fruit. After another 100 years, it will bear 7 ripe blood fruits, each of which can help a person successfully break through to the nascent soul stage. Legend has it that with a good recipe, the whole mature blood orchid can be used to refine a pill that can extend one's lifespan. It is said that consuming a similar pill can increase one's lifespan by 50 years. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but I'm sure many people here have heard of this legend. Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect to come across such a treasure in this auction. Just like what Wu Tai said, it was the legend that could extend one's lifespan. The legend was the most tempting. It should be known that every sect had people who were reaching the end of their lifespans, and many of these people were elders of the various sections. If they could buy this 7-star blood orchid and win the hearts of those elders, it would definitely be a great merit. For a moment, the people from the righteous and devil sects were rubbing their palms together, looking like they were determined to get it. The people from Fuxian Island and the 10,000 demons were no exception. Dongfang Chang'eo and Qiu Wuyuan had the same idea. Both of them stared at the blood orchid without blinking. Some of the smaller sects were sighing. With their wealth, they naturally couldn't get such a treasure. Yu Qianqiu watched coldly from the side. Let's not talk about whether this thing can be used to refine a pill that can extend one's lifespan. Just based on this thing alone, I want it. You can't pass the auction. If you want to compete with me in terms of wealth, I'm afraid that Fuxian Island and the 10,000 demons are still far behind. Thinking of this, he sneered disdainfully. You all want to live longer. That's simply wishful thinking. What a blow. As soon as buyer number 1 spoke, everyone looked over. From his tone, it seemed that there was something wrong with this blood orchid. It should be known that he was the one who recognized it at first glance. Obviously, his eyesight was better than everyone else's. Qiu Wuyuan gave a look to the people around him. Immediately someone shouted, "Mister, what do you think? Why don't you say it and let everyone hear it?" Someone answered, "Yes. Everyone is sitting here bidding. It won't be good if you buy a fake. If you have any doubts, you can say it. I'm all ears." "I didn't say that this blood orchid is fake." Yu Qianqiu replied coldly and didn't speak. It made a group of people feel uneasy. They didn't know if what he said was true. If it was fake, it would be too wasteful for everyone to spend a lot of money to buy it. After all, no one had seen this 7-star blood orchid. There was a lot of discussion below. Wu Sihai, who was in the dark room, frowned. Did I really make a mistake? According to the records on the ancient books collected by the Wu family, this should be the 7-star blood orchid. Wu Tai, who was on the stage, was a little embarrassed. Everyone was like this. How could this blood orchid be auctioned? Therefore, he bowed to Yu Qianqiu and said with a smile, "Mister, you can say what you want to say. If it is really fake, my Wu family will immediately withdraw it and auction it with other treasures. We will never blame you. What's more, my Wu family doesn't want to give up this opportunity to broaden my horizons. Please enlighten me, mister. I said it before. I didn't say that this blood orchid is fake. You can just auction it." Yu Qianqiu said coldly. Wu Tai was dumbfounded. Why did you say that in the beginning? Now you say it again. How do you expect everyone to believe you? What's more, you called out the name of this blood orchid as soon as it appeared, which made everyone suspicious. Wu Liqing, who was frowning secretly, suddenly heard his grandfather's voice. He nodded slightly after listening to it. He turned his head and smiled at Yu Qianqiu. You are the only one who knows this blood orchid. You have to explain what you said at the beginning. Otherwise, how can this blood orchid be auctioned? Yu Qianqiu was too lazy to care. I will say whatever I want to say. Why do you care? Why should I explain to you? If you don't want to buy it, I can just take advantage of it. But since Wu Liqing had spoken, he felt a little embarrassed. His words had indeed affected the Wu family's auction. After pondering for a while, Yu Qianqiu nodded. He stood up and slowly walked to the stage. He circled around the blood orchid and looked at it. He touched it and even sniffed it with his nose. It matched the 7-star blood orchid, recorded in the Pill Recipe Jade Archive. He raised his head and looked down. This is indeed the 7-star blood orchid. There's no mistake about it. He then walked down the stage. Wait. Someone beside Qiu Wuyuan stood up and said, You said it was the 7-star blood orchid at the beginning. We all heard it. But just now, you said we were indulging in fantasy. What do you mean by that? Mister, please explain. Yu Qianqiu paused and looked at him. He said coldly, If you don't want to buy it, why should I explain it to you? You. That person was about to lose his temper. But Qiu Wuyuan held him back. Qiu Wuyuan shook his head and transmitted his voice to him. Don't act recklessly. I can't see through this person's cultivation. It's very likely that he's an expert at the final stage of the passing calamity stage. That person was stunned. He swallowed his words and sat down obediently. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly. Just as he was about to leave, Wu Sihai walked out from backstage. He cupped his hands and said, Mister, please wait. This old man is the current head of the Wu family, Wu Sihai. I have something to ask. Mister, please give me some face and stay. Yu Qianqiu naturally couldn't put on airs in front of him. He stopped and cupped his hands in return. I don't dare. There's no harm in asking. I'll tell you everything I know. Aya, this young man is quite sensible. Wu Sihai nodded and said with a smile, Since Mister has confirmed that this is the 7-star blood orchid, I won't ask more about its authenticity. What I want to ask is also what everyone wants to ask. I'm also a little confused about what Mister said before. It's said that when this blood orchid is refined into a panacea, it can prolong one's life by 50 years. I think everyone has heard of this legend. Why did Mister say that wanting to prolong one's life is a fantasy? Is this legend wrong? Please enlighten me, Mister. Chapter 198. Damn it. Talking too much brings trouble. Is there any difference between what you said and what they asked? It's nothing more than letting me eliminate the impact of this matter. Forget it. I'll clean up my own mess. Otherwise, I won't be welcomed by your Wu family in the future. Yu Qianqiu paused and did not answer him directly. Instead, he walked back to the blood orchid and looked at the flower. He said in a deep voice, I said that wanting to live a long life is whimsical. I don't mean anything else. I don't mean that this flower is fake, but there are other reasons. Wu Sihai followed and asked modestly, Please enlighten me, sir. Our Wu family is good at discerning. We really don't want to let go of this opportunity to learn. Yu Qianqiu nodded. He extended his hand into the orchid's leaves and gently stroked a small white flower. He said, The 7-star blood orchid truly only blooms after 100 years. and it only bears a blood fruit after another 100 years. From what I can see, this blood orchid should have already bloomed and withered once. I presume that its owner didn't know the essentials of planting it, so he took out such a treasure to auction. As he said, he looked down and saw that everyone was listening attentively. He also had a little interest in showing off, so he continued. After the 7-star blood orchid blooms, and is placed in the night, the 7 white flowers will automatically correspond to the Big Dipper in the sky, just like a sunflower automatically corresponds to the sun. In addition, its color and the smell of blood are the origin of the name 7-star blood orchid. After the flower blooms for 100 years, it will bear 7 blood fruits in one night. When it is ripe, it will fall to the ground and melt as soon as it falls. It can't be collected unless it's made of metal. Often people who don't understand will find that the blood orchid, that has been planted for 100 years, is about to bear fruit the next day. How can the flower suddenly disappear? This is because the blood fruits have been digested when they fall to the ground and become invisible. If you put a metal under the flower in advance, you can get all the blood fruits that fall. After listening, Wu Sihai was suddenly in awe. He only knew the appearance of the blood orchid from ancient books. It would correspond to the vision of the 7 stars at night. It was through this method that he concluded that this was the real 7-star blood orchid. He didn't expect that there was such a care in planting it. If no one told him, who could know the mystery? After all, not everyone had the opportunity to plant the blood orchid. Everyone below the stage listened attentively. Some people softly said, "Oh," while others secretly nodded, looking as if they had suddenly understood. So that's how it is. Below, Wu Lishua's eyes were filled with little stars. This person was so amazing that even her grandfather admired him. Bai Zizong and the other 3 didn't expect this guy to know these things. They really couldn't tell. What the crowd didn't know was that the seller was stomping his feet in frustration after hearing Yu Qianqiu's words. Just like what Yu Qianqiu had said, this flower really only bloomed once every 100 years. When it was time to bear fruit, he was overjoyed. Who knew that the flower that was still blooming that day, on the next day, not only did he not see the fruit, he could not even see the original flower anymore. This matter troubled him for a long time. He couldn't figure it out, and even doubted whether it was the real blood orchid. That was why he decided to take advantage of this grand auction to sell it, so that he wouldn't feel sad when he saw it. Who knew that it was because of this reason? How could he not regret it? But now that it had been taken out for auction, it was impossible to withdraw it. The flower of this pot of blood orchid is only the size of a thumb. I think the time of blooming is less than 10 years. After 100 years, it will grow to the size of a cup of tea. At this time, it will be time to bear fruit. Pay attention to using gold tools to collect the blood fruit. Of course, everyone may think that I am alarmist. The whole blood orchid is used to refine the elixir. How can it be a fantasy to prolong one's life? Oh, but the problem lies in the refining. This elixir that can prolong one's life is not something that anyone can refine. Yu Qianqiu said faintly and said to Wu Sihai, "Are you satisfied with my explanation?" The people below were listening to the key point, but he didn't say anything. They couldn't help but look at Wu Sihai with expectant and fiery eyes, hoping that he could ask the number 1 buyer to reveal some more information. It wasn't every day that they had the opportunity to hear such precious remarks. Wu Sihai looked down and was stunned. Everyone's gaze was too hard to refuse. He was doing business with the people of the world. If he really ignored them, he was afraid that he would offend them. The people sitting here almost represented the forces of the righteous and evil Tao in the cultivation world. This was equivalent to the entire cultivation world begging him. This pressure made him feel a little too much. He couldn't help but smile awkwardly at Yu Qianqiu. I see that everyone has the desire to listen more. If it is convenient for Mr., you might as well reveal more. Yeah. If it is convenient for Mr., you might as well reveal more. Everyone responded. For everyone, it was a pity to miss such an opportunity. Yu Qianqiu was too lazy to care about them. The key was to give face to Wu Sihai. He frowned and nodded. Since the Wu clan's clan master has spoken, I will be more long-winded. Wu Sihai quickly waved his hand. No, no, Mister's words are like pearls. I usually can't hear it. How can I be long-winded? Yeah. Everyone echoed again. And it was quite a bit of flattery. Damn it. Why do I feel like I am teaching a student? Yu Qianqiu shook his head lightly and continued. The 7-star blood orchid can indeed be refined into elixirs that can prolong one's life. If the refinement of the elixir is successful, one elixir should be able to extend one's life by more than 50 years. Extending one's life by 50 years is only relative to the secular people. For cultivators, a good elixir is enough to extend their life by 100 years. But the most important thing is that this blood orchid is only the medicinal guide of this elixir, and it is indispensable. At the same time, the 7-star blood orchid corresponds to 7 kinds of elixirs. 2 of them are relatively easy to find, the 1,000-year-old ginseng and the 1,000-year-old lingzhi mushroom. I believe that it will not be difficult for any sect to find them. The most difficult to find is a rare natural treasure, which is also the main ingredient of this elixir. It is called the adumbra flower. Together with the blood orchid, a total of 8 elixirs are required. Coupled with the correct elixir recipe, the elixir can be refined. This elixir is called the 7 Orifices Exquisite Elixir. Adumbra flower. So it is the legendary 7 Orifices Exquisite Elixir. How can this be refined? There was an uproar below. They suddenly felt that refining this elixir was as difficult as ascending to heaven. Even if they could find the correct elixir recipe, where could they find the adumbra flower? It would have been fine if they didn't figure it out. But once they figured it out, they realized that it was something that only existed in legends. It was too disappointing. To be able to say this much was already giving Wu Sihai a lot of face. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands at Wu Sihai and walked down. After Wu Sihai heard this, he felt like he was in a dream. He cupped his hands at Yu Qianqiu and sighed at Wu Tai. Now that things have been clarified, let's continue the auction. After that, he shook his head and returned to the backstage. With this, the price of the 7-star blood orchid would not go up. Wu Lixue looked at Yu Qianqiu, who had returned to his seat. His face was full of admiration, hidden under the black cloth. Bai Zizong and the other 3 were even more curious about his background. It was definitely not easy to know such things. At least, they had never heard of it before. After everyone shook their heads and sighed, they began to guess the background of the first buyer. At first, they laughed at him for judging things based on the size of the object. Now it seemed that he was the real expert. Maybe he would be able to pick up a treasure in the first round of the auction. On the stage, Wu Tai looked at the 7-star blood orchid and smiled bitterly. He originally thought that he could sell it for a good price, but now it seemed that it was still possible. He glanced at the crowd and said loudly, 7-star blood orchid. The starting price is 3 million upper-grade spirit stones. The highest bidder will get it. The minimum increment must not be less than 100,000 upper-grade spirit stones. Everyone please bid. Chapter 199. Everyone looked at Yu Qianqiu at the same time. He was the one who said it, and he was the one who said it. Naturally, they wanted to see his reaction. After all, no one knew if it was true or false, and it was all his words. If he made a bid, it was likely that he was bluffing everyone. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes to rest, and there was silence on the stage. Wu Tai, who was on the stage, sighed silently. A good deal was messed up by the number 1 buyer again. After letting their imaginations run wild, many of them suspected that Yu Qianqiu might really be out of money, and he might be messing things up on purpose. Thus someone shouted, 3 million. When someone shouted, everyone came to a realization. Firstly, this 7-star blood orchid was unquestionable. Anyway, it was something that was bought to claim credit. As for what kind of flower or fruit it would bear, it didn't matter. Did he really expect to get a share of the 7 Orifices Exquisite Elixir? Who cares? As long as the elders of the faction were happy, it would be a great merit. 3,100,000. Someone immediately followed. 3,200,000. 3,500,000. 4 million. Suddenly, the shouts came one after another, and the price kept rising. On the stage, Wu Tai's bitter face gradually turned into a smile. Bai Zizong and the others looked at the indifferent Yu Qianqiu and thought that he really ran out of money. Otherwise, he would inevitably interfere. Wu Lixue had the same thoughts as her brothers and immediately let out a sigh of relief. She held the plate in her hand casually and looked around to watch the bustling scene. At this moment, she recalled that the Wu clan would take a 20% commission from the auction. Naturally, she hoped that the price would be as high as possible. Her big eyes kept looking around, listening to the rising price. Yu Qianqiu noticed that Wu Lixue's body was twisting around to watch the bustling scene. He opened his eyes and sized her up casually. From her completely different attitude, he roughly understood her thoughts. The phrase big breasts and no brains floated in his mind. Yu Qianqiu smiled and closed his eyes again. This is great. The more unexpected it is, the more shocking it will be. Only then would the four great families value him more. Money is a son of AB*TCH. It is spent on the edge of a knife. I don't feel bad about it. He comforted himself again in his heart. Once the price passed 5 million, the continuous bidding suddenly decreased by half. The remaining people were probably from the top sects in the cultivation world. Dongfang Chang'ao of Fuxian Island and Qiu Wuyuan of 10,000 Demons were also watching coldly from the sidelines. Both of them were determined to get the 7-star blood orchid. However, it seemed that there were still a lot of people bidding for it. At the same time, they were the #1 cultivators of both the righteous and demonic sects, so they didn't join in the fun for the time being. Both of them were prepared to be the oriole behind the mantis stalking the cicada. However, he didn't know if the two of them were the orioles, or if an eagle or other birds of prey would appear. When the price reached 8 million, there were less than 10 people who were still bidding. Wu Tai, the host of the auction, regained his confident smile and calmly watched everyone compete with each other. When the price exceeded the bottom line of 9 million, there were a few people left. The remaining 5 people took turns and raised the price to 10 million. Then 2 people stopped bidding. Perhaps this price had reached their bottom line. Perhaps they were considering conserving their strength for the remaining 4 treasures. It seemed that the latter was more likely. If they didn't even have 10 million upper-grade spirit stones, how could they buy the real good things? 13 million. Once this price was out, the situation of the 3 parties immediately became the dominant one. The whole place was silent. After a while it was still the same. It seemed that the winner and the loser had been decided. Wu Tai shouted with satisfaction. This gentleman has bid 13 million upper-grade spirit stones. Is there anyone else who wants to increase the price? He didn't forget to glance at the #1 buyer, who had bid in every round. Everyone looked around and didn't forget to look at him. Seeing that the #1 buyer seemed to be asleep, they thought to themselves, as expected, he has no money. Everyone was fooled by his generosity in the previous rounds. Many people silently calculated the total value of the 3 rounds of bidding and came to the conclusion that he didn't even have 10 million. They couldn't help but despise his act of pretending to be rich in their hearts. Only Bai Zizong and the rest, as well as the Wu clansmen who knew the truth, didn't think this way. Yu Qianqiu was different from the others. The others represented the financial resources of the various sects, but Yu Qianqiu represented his personal financial resources. How many people in the cultivation world could take out more than 8 million upper-grade spirit stones privately? Moreover, it was the highest-grade spirit stones. Yu Qianqiu sneered in his heart. The 2 people who could casually bid 6 to 7 million to tease me still haven't made a sound. I don't believe that they don't have money. This gentleman has bid 13 million upper-grade spirit stones. Is there anyone else who wants to increase the price? Wu Tai asked again. If no one responded to the price after 3 times, the 7-star blood orchid would be returned to its owner. 14 million. Just when everyone thought that the outcome was set, someone suddenly increased the price. It wasn't anyone else but Qiu Wuyuan of 10,000 Demons. Yu Qianqiu's heart moved. Here it comes. 14,100,000. The previous person increased the price by another 100,000, but it could be heard that his voice was a little reluctant. 15 million. Qiu Wuyuan increased the price again. That person was instantly speechless. The crowd couldn't help but click their tongues. There's always a higher mountain. The crowd quietened down again. Wu Tai looked at the crowd and said in a clear voice, "This person has bid 15 million. Is there anyone else who wants to increase the price?" 16 million. Dongfang Chang'ao made a move. He had no choice but to bid because many of the old consecrators in Fuxian Island's Heaven Will Pavilion were extremely old and close to the end of their lifespans. They needed the 7-star blood orchid more than other sections. It didn't matter if it was as buyer number 1 said. Since this legendary item had appeared, he had to try his best to obtain it. Otherwise, it would be hard for him to face the elders of Fuxian Island when he returned. Yu Qianqiu's eyes suddenly opened wide. He. Finally he appeared. Qiu Wuyuan looked at Dongfang Chang'ao. He was almost certain that this person was the representative of Fuxian Island. He increased the price again and said, 17 million. 18 million. Dongfang Chang'ao increased the price again. He also started to suspect that the other party was from 10,000 demons. 19 million. Qiu Wuyuan gritted his teeth and continued to chase. He had no choice. 10,000 demons might not have as many people close to the end of their lifespans as compared to Fuxian Island, but there were still a lot of them. 20 million. When Dongfang Chang'ao said this price, the audience was shocked. It was only the 6th treasure, and they were able to take out so much money. If these two people weren't from Fuxian Island and 10,000 demons, then they must have seen a ghost. Perhaps it was because the onlookers had a clear view of the situation. They immediately guessed the origin of these two people. Yu Qianqiu was also muttering. Could these two be asterisk stars be from Fuxian Island and 10,000 demons? Fuxian Island. Damn it. Who cares? You dare to cheat me? I don't care where you are from. 21 million. Qiu Wuyuan increased the price again. Actually, this blood orchid was already his bottom line at 20 million. However, when he thought that the other party was from Fuxian Island and 10,000 demons, he decided to increase the price no matter what. Even if the other party took it in the end, he had to make the other party pay more. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to take it lying down. 22 million. Dongfang Chang'ao didn't think as much as Qiu Wuyuan. He only knew that he wouldn't give up unless the item was worth 25 million. Of course, Fuxian Island's strong financial strength was also an important reason for him to do this. 23 million. This was Qiu Wuyuan's last bid. After he finished shouting, he suddenly felt a lot more relaxed. Success or failure depended on this bid. He had already tried his best. He believed that the old ancestors of the Myriad Demon's Palace wouldn't blame him if they found out. 24 million. Dongfang Chang'ao also made his last bid. If the other party increased the price to 2,500, he would give up. Going too far was as bad as not going far enough. Silence. The other person didn't speak anymore. Could it be that the winner had been decided? Everyone's heart was beating fast. They didn't expect this blood orchid to be sold at such a sky-high price. It seemed to be even higher than the price of the finale treasure in the previous grand auction. Fuxian Island and 10,000 demons were indeed rich and overbearing. Unexpected. Too unexpected. On the stage, Wu Tai's heart was also beating fast. Even Wu Sihai, who was in the dark room, didn't expect the 7-star blood orchid to be so valuable. It was far beyond everyone's expectations. Yu Qianqiu, on the other hand, was pondering. From the looks of it, it wasn't a loss to buy it at such a high price. Presumably, after buying it, I would breed some and sell it. I would definitely be able to earn back my capital with interest. Good stuff, good stuff. Not bad. Not bad. Seeing that no one was bidding anymore, Wu Tai said excitedly, 7-star blood orchid. Buyer number 3 bids 24 million high-grade spirit stones. Anyone else? Chapter 200. The audience looked around, but it was obvious that the price had reached its limit, so no one made a sound. Dongfang Chang'ao secretly let out a sigh of relief. Although he bought it, the price was too high. Wu Tai suppressed his excitement and shouted again. 7-star blood orchid. Buyer number 3 bids 24 million high-grade spirit stones. Anyone else? The audience was very quiet, and no one made a bid. Seems like it's time for me to make a move. Yu Qianqiu stretched his back and let out a soft moan. He tilted his head slightly to Wu Lixue and said leisurely, 24. 1 million. This voice appeared very abruptly, and it was no less than a sudden clap of thunder in the quiet auction house. Swoosh swoosh. Everyone's eyes were on buyer number 1. Wu Lixue's red lips were slightly opened under the black cloth, which was very alluring, but it was a pity that no one could see it. Her eyes were wide open, and she stared at the lazy man beside her. Her eyes were filled with disbelief, and she suspected that she was hallucinating. Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly and nodded to her. After getting the confirmation, Wu Lixue looked around like a thief, and she weakly raised the sign in her hand. If someone shouted beside her, she would definitely be so scared that the sign would fall from her hand. 24. 1 million. I just spent 24. 1 million high-grade spirit stones in one go. How many 500 high-grade spirit stones would that be? Wu Lixue felt that the arm was as heavy as 1,000 caddies, and her mind was a mess. Anyway, she couldn't calculate it clearly now. She tried hard to control the arm that was raised, and slowly put it down. In fact, she really wanted to grab Yu Qianqiu and beat him up. Are you trying to scare me to death? After the shock, Bai Zizong and the other 3 looked at each other. This guy is a little too rich. In the dark room, Wu Sihai's eyes flickered. He really couldn't think of any force that could have more financial power than Fuxian Island and 10,000 demons. Could it really be a force in the cultivation world other than the Huaxia Empire? Wang! The crowd was in an uproar. Although Yu Qianqiu had added an additional 100,000 yuan, it was still beyond everyone's expectations. He was indeed the number 1 buyer. Wu Taiyong said excitedly. Buyer number 1 bids 24. 1 million. Is there anyone else who wants to increase the price? As he spoke, he looked at buyer number 3. Dongfang Chang, Ao's face twitched. Who was the first buyer? After a moment of hesitation, he resolutely shouted, 25 million. There was no need for anyone to remind him. Yu Qianqiu looked at Wu Lixue and calmly said, 25. 1 million. The latter's body trembled. She raised the paddle in her hand with trembling hands, and then quickly retracted it. She no longer had the excitement she had at the beginning of the auction. The price was simply too high, and it made her, the one who raised the paddle, feel the pressure. After Yu Qianqiu finished his bid, he turned around and gave buyer number 3 and Qiu Wuyuan a threatening glance. Both of them felt a chill in their hearts, and felt that something was wrong. Another increase of 100,000 yuan? The crowd instantly booed. Everyone was now quite suspicious of what buyer number 1 said about the blood orchid. Since he said that it wasn't very useful, why did he bid such a high price? Wu Tai asked 3 times in a loud voice if anyone wanted to increase the price. Dongfang Chang'ao didn't say anything. That buyer number 1 seemed to be targeting him. He didn't know when he had offended him. Could it be that he was from the 10,000 demons? Just like that, out of the 6 auction items, 4 of them fell into the hands of buyer number 1. When Yu Qianqiu went backstage and took out 2,510 top-grade spirit stones, Wu Sihai was completely speechless. This person's background wasn't ordinary. The 7-star blood orchid was already sold at a sky-high price. What treasure would the Wu clan auction in the 7th round? Everyone was very excited and was waiting to see, even if they couldn't bid for it. It was also a good thing to be able to witness this grand occasion. Under everyone's gaze, a Wu clansman carried a clothes rack and stood it on the stage. Another clansman carried a tray that was covered with a red cloth. Subsequently, the person in front lifted the red cloth and took out a folded white shirt from the tray. He hung it on the clothes rack, and the 2 of them immediately retreated. A snow-white gown that was worn by a woman was hung there quietly. The entire gown was snow-white without any impurities. There wasn't anything special about it. Everyone was stunned. Could this be a treasure too? There was a lot of discussion. Wu Tai, who was on the stage, smiled and said to everyone, "Everyone, can you see what's different about this gown?" Wu Tai, when did your Wu clan's auction house change to selling clothes? Someone shouted from below. and immediately caused everyone to burst into laughter. Wu Tai smiled and didn't answer. He walked to the snow-white gown and extended his hand to pick up a ribbon. It was the one-piece waist belt. He displayed the other side of the ribbon in front of everyone and said with a smile, "There are 2 words on it. Why doesn't everyone take a look at it?" The words were very small and couldn't be seen clearly. Everyone circulated their arts to take a closer look and saw the 2 ancient words "Little Snow" at the end of the ribbon in Wu Tai's hand. After taking a closer look, most of the people couldn't see anything, but some of them were frowning as though they recalled something. Suddenly someone exclaimed, "It's Little Snow! This is Little Snow's gown? Who is Little Snow? What does she do? So what if it's her gown? Could it be more valuable than the 7-star blood orchid?" Everyone was at a loss. "I didn't expect someone to recognize her. That's right, it's Little Snow. This is Little Snow's snow gauze gown." Wu Tai nodded and said with a smile. Someone shouted impatiently, "Wu Tai, don't talk in riddles. Quickly tell us if this Little Snow is a man or a woman, and what does she do? Could this gown really be some artifact?" "Haha, of course Little Snow is a woman. Otherwise, why would she wear female clothing?" Wu Tai put down the ribbon in his hand and tidied up the white gown. After looking at it for a while, he shook his head and exclaimed, "Not many people know about Little Snow, but if I say this gown has something to do with divine craftsman Immersing, I believe everyone will be interested." "Ah, divine craftsman again? Could this Little Snow be the divine craftsman's woman?" someone below the stage asked. Before Wu Tai could answer, someone replied, "Little Snow is not the divine craftsman's woman, but the divine craftsman's maid. Legend has it that she is a female cultivator who has reached the soul formation stage. She has been protecting the divine craftsman since ancient times." Soul formation stage cultivator? There really is a soul formation stage cultivator. A soul formation stage cultivator is someone else's maid? What kind of joke is this? Everyone had different reactions, but they were skeptical about the existence of a soul formation stage cultivator. That person shook his head and said, "I can't be sure if Little Snow is really a soul formation stage cultivator. These are all legends. If the gown on the stage is really the snow gauze gown, then it should be the treasure gown that divine craftsman Immersing made for Little Snow." Yu Qianqiu was silent. Others might not believe the existence of a soul formation stage cultivator, but he absolutely believed that such a terrifying person existed in the demon ghost region. Dongfang Chang, Ao also didn't believe it at first, but during the trip to the demon ghost region, he had thoroughly experienced it. He didn't even see the person, but his divine sense swept past and heavily injured everyone present, including a few late-stage tribulation-passing consecrators. He believed that if that person wanted to kill them, none of them could escape. After that, everyone from Fuxian Island came to the conclusion that that person was definitely a soul formation stage cultivator. Otherwise, with Ma Jugu's cultivation, she wouldn't have been so weak. Even now, Dongfang Chang, Ao still felt a chill when he thought about it. There was always someone better out there. This saying was true. That day was too terrifying. Chapter 201. Wu Tai, can your Wu clan really confirm that this is Little Snow's snow gauze gown? The person who revealed Little Snow's origins asked. Wu Tai raised his palms and gestured for everyone to be quiet. He looked at the gown and sighed. "We can't be sure before we verify it, but after we verify it, I won't believe anyone who says it isn't the snow gauze gown. On the surface, this item really doesn't look much different from a woman's clothing. But in reality, it has many wondrous uses. Perhaps only a divine craftsman could refine such a wondrous treasure. Is the name of the divine craftsman Immersing on it?" Someone below the stage shouted. Wu Tai shook his head. "No." The person who revealed Little Snow's origins smiled. "If it really is the snow gauze gown, then the name Immersing on it is probably fake. Rumor has it that this item is one of the few divine craftsmen who didn't leave their name on it." "Why? Isn't it said that divine craftsmen would leave their name on the treasures they refine?" that person asked. The former person smiled again. Everything has an exception. Rumor has it that Little Snow is a divine craftsman's maid and a soul formation cultivator. If her clothes have the divine craftsman's name on it, then the two of them aren't just master and servant, but Tao companions. Think about it. How could a divine craftsman leave his name on a woman's clothing? And rumor has it that this snow gauze gown is one of the treasures that the divine craftsman didn't leave his name on. There's also a rumor that the divine craftsman, on a whim, made 4 treasures for Little Snow at once. These 4 treasures didn't leave the name, Emoruchi, on them, but instead left Little Snow's name. I don't know if that's true or not. Another person said doubtfully, "It's just a woman's clothing, how powerful can it be?" Elder Wu, just what kind of treasure is this? This snow gauze gown is indeed incomparably mystical. It's truly a work of art. No wonder it's the work of a divine craftsman. Wu Tai exclaimed in admiration. My Wu clan did experiments according to the effects of the legendary snow gauze shirt, and we discovered that it's exactly the same as in the legends. It's able to repel dust, smoke, water, and fire, and no matter what temperature it's worn, it's able to maintain the coolness and ventilation of the body, causing people to be neither cold nor hot and extremely comfortable. For us cultivators, its greatest effect is still its defensive function. After infusing it with true essence, it can produce a protective light shield that can withstand a full blow from a cultivator in the middle stage of the crossing tribulation stage. Of course, this is under the condition that magic treasures are not used and multiple attacks are avoided. Apart from that, only cultivators at the end of the tribulation transcendence stage would be able to break through the defense of this treasure. It was even stronger than magic treasures like the Vajra bracelet. Even though such a defense couldn't be considered to be very good, and it was even inferior to ordinary high-grade defensive magic treasures, the various miraculous effects it possessed were sufficient to allow it to step into the ranks of high-grade magic treasures. The value of this snow gauze gown is probably due to its miraculous effects. Everyone clicked their tongues in wonder. A piece of clothing could actually have so many magical effects. The divine craftsman really deserved his reputation. Unfortunately, it was a piece of clothing for women. Most men couldn't wear it. Thinking like this caused everyone to have a headache. It seemed like the legendary divine craftsman didn't do proper work. So why did they refine some useless magic treasures? The demon-revealing mirror before them was the same. Being able to be proficient in such a strange and obscene Tao, their attainments in equipment refinement could be easily imagined. If it was used properly, then how great of a treasure would it be to refine? Yu Qianqiu didn't think so. Hearing Wu Tai say that the clothing had so many functions, even better than the best air conditioner in his previous world, his eyes lit up. His sister and Chu Ping are both like to wear white. If he bought it, it would be perfect for them. Damn! Didn't the legendary divine craftsman say that he could make spirit treasures? Why does he have to be so sentimental? Someone scolded. Many people laughed along. Anyway, they definitely couldn't afford this thing now. They just wanted to join in the fun. So someone shouted, "Is there any disciple of the Moon Clan here? Why don't you buy it for Fairy Qianghua? I think it'll be perfect for her." Then there was another round of laughter. Hey, you can't say that. Wu Tai waved his hand and sternly said to everyone, "I won't hide it from you all." That gentleman said that the divine craftsman made 4 treasures for Xiao Shui on a whim. They are the treasures that will be auctioned in the last 4 rounds. Snow Luo gown is one of them. The other 3 will be displayed one by one in the next 3 rounds. Although they can't be compared to top-grade Dharma treasures, they were made by the divine craftsman casually. They can't be compared to spirit treasures carefully made by him. What? Cloud-chasing hairpin, Qi-yin handkerchief, and snow-long damask are all here? The person who revealed Xiao Shui's identity stood up and asked, "Since the 4 items are here, why is the Wu Clan auction house selling them separately?" Yes, take them out together for everyone to see. The scene was a bit chaotic. Some people also joined in the commotion. Wu Tai wanted to slap himself. Wasn't he just asking for trouble? Selling the 4 treasures separately was obviously to sell them at a good price. The snow gauze gown, which was like the demon-revealing mirror, was a useless Dharma treasure, so it was specially arranged to be sold here. He hoped to use the reputation of the divine craftsman to create the same effect as the demon-revealing mirror. Plus, the snow gauze gown was of a higher level than the demon-revealing mirror and was more practical. It should be able to sell for a good price. Everyone be quiet, everyone. Let's auction them one by one. We will definitely let everyone see the treasures in the end. Don't worry. Wu Tai waved his hand from the stage. In the dark room, Wu Sihai frowned. Even if the Wu clan wants to make money, you don't have to sell the whole set of Dharma treasures. Isn't this a scam? If you want to sell it, just take it out and sell it all together, someone shouted. Then someone followed suit and shouted, yeah, take it out and sell it as a set. There must be representatives from the supporting Immortal Island and the 10,000 demons here. Is the Wu clan afraid that they can't afford it? There were more and more jeers, and it was going to get out of control if this carried on. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said to Wu Liqing, I also feel that it is better for the Wu clan to sell the 4 items together. If this continues, it will be the Wu clan against the entire cultivation world. Wu Liqing remained silent. The clan head would naturally deal with it. TSK. Everyone quiet down. You are so noisy. Qiu Wuyuan from the 10,000 demons roared, and suddenly tore off his black clothes, revealing his true appearance. He shouted to the surroundings, I am Qiu Wuyuan from the 10,000 demons. Everyone, if you have any theories, come and talk to me. Qiu Wuyuan stood up, and the 4 people beside him stood up too. They tore off their black clothes and revealed their true appearance. They looked around with cold eyes and intimidated everyone. Someone whispered, It's the 4 generals of the Mo clan. Those who followed the crowd were instantly silenced. They all sat down obediently. Who in the cultivation world didn't know about the 10,000 demons? How many of them didn't know about Qiu Wuyuan? This old man was an ambitious and ruthless demonic cultivator. He did everything according to his whims. When he was angry, he would kill without batting an eye. His calamity middle stage cultivation was especially terrifying. Who among the people who were jeering just now was his match? Even if they were all added up, they wouldn't be enough for him to kill. Moreover, a true expert wouldn't cause trouble like a hoodlum under normal circumstances. Someone said that it was better to offend the sect leader of the supporting Immortal Island than to offend such a person. Although Feng Xiangtian was more powerful, he had the title of a righteous person. He was more or less reasonable, so there was still a chance for him to live. Offending Qiu Wuyuan was simply courting death. Moreover, the famous 4 generals of the Mo clan was here too. None of them were easy to deal with. Qiu Wuyuan widened his eyes and looked around. It was noisy just now, but now it was completely quiet. Yu Qianqiu was stunned when he saw it was him. What was this guy doing here instead of staying in the 100 Flowers Valley? He looked around and could not help but chuckle. The evil name of the demonic cultivators is indeed very destructive. Once the name is announced, even Elder Wu's throat will be broken from shouting. In such a quiet place, there was actually someone talking and laughing in front of Qiu Wuyuan. Everyone could not help but look at buyer number 1 in a new light. They were all guessing his identity. Qiu Wuyuan naturally heard it as well. Seeing that it was him, he frowned and paused for a moment. He didn't say anything and instead shouted towards the stage. Brother Wu, it's already like this. Why are you still hiding in the dark room? Please come out and talk. The brother Wu he was talking about was obviously Wu Sihai. Otherwise, he would not be called a brother. Wu Sihai was the master of the Wu clan, one of the 4 major clans. So Qiu Wuyuan's tone was still considered polite. Wu Sihai walked out from behind the curtain and glared at Wu Tai. Then, he cupped his hands towards Qiu Wuyuan and said, Brother Qiu, long time no see. What can I do for you? Qiu Wuyuan blew his beard and stared at him. Your Wu clan is really unscrupulous. You actually sold the set of 4 transcendent artifacts separately. I think it's better to auction them all together. Wu Sihai smiled faintly and did not beat around the bush. He said directly, the base price of the snow gown is 8 million superior grade spiritual stones. The base price of the snow long silk is 10 million superior grade spiritual stones. The base price of the Qi Yin handkerchief is 13 million superior-grade spiritual stones. The base price of the cloud-chasing hairpin is 15 million superior-grade spiritual stones. The total is 46 million superior-grade spiritual stones. Brother Chiu, it's not a problem to sell all 4 transcendent artifacts together. But the problem is how many sects have the financial resources of the 10,000 demons to bid for such a high price? Putting aside my Wu clan, this is a loss for the seller and other buyers. Even if I agree to it, others will not agree to it. Therefore it's better to sell them separately. Chiu Wuyuan knitted his brows. He knew that Wu Sihai was speaking the truth, but Chiu Wuyuan wanted to take advantage of the myriad demons' temple's financial resources. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the good intention to stand up for the Wu clan. He didn't reply to Wu Sihai, and suddenly turned to buyer number 3 and sneered. Dongfang Chang, Ao, you have been hiding at the side and watching the show for so long. Isn't it time to show your face? Dongfang Chang Ao. Supporting Immortal Island's Cultivation Pavilion's elder, Dongfang Chang Ao, was also here? Everyone looked over at the same time. When Chiu Wuyuan suspected that buyer number 1 and buyer number 3 were from supporting Immortal Island, he started to observe carefully. Buyer number 1's cultivation was unfathomable, and he couldn't tell who he was. As for buyer number 3, he felt that he was very familiar. Chiu Wuyuan thought for a moment and knew that he must be Dongfang Chang'ao. As the two of them had dealt with each other more than once or twice, they were very familiar with each other. Dongfang Chang'ao snorted coldly. He stood up and removed the black cloak on his body, revealing his true appearance as he surveyed the surroundings. He cupped his hands towards Wu Sihai, who was on the stage, and his eyes met with his old enemy, Cho Wuyuan. The two people beside him also revealed their true appearance. Yu Qianqiu took a glance and knew that these two people were also the two tribulation-crossing elders of supporting Immortal Island's Cultivation Pavilion. Dongfang Chang'ao, what do you think about the suggestion to auction these 4 items together? Chiu Wuyuan asked. Dongfang Chang'ao said expressionlessly, if others don't have any objections, I naturally don't either. Actually, with supporting Immortal Island's financial resources, of course, he hoped that they would be auctioned together. This way, he could bid freely. Even if he didn't get it, it would be because he didn't bring enough money. When he returned, the sect wouldn't blame him. However, his identity was different from Chiu Wuyuan's. Chiu Wuyuan was from the Diabolism, while he was from the righteous Tao. Naturally, he couldn't say it out loud for his own selfish reasons. Hypocrite, Chiu Wuyuan said disdainfully. He looked back at the front row and cupped his fists. May I know who buyer number 1 is? Can I have a look at your true appearance? Everyone looked up at the same time. It seemed that they wanted to see who this rich and imposing buyer number 1 was. Wu Sihai and Bai Zizong, who were on the stage, knew that he was a disciple of supporting Immortal Island. When they thought about the scene of him bidding against Dongfang Chang, just now, they wondered what would happen if he revealed his true appearance. All of a sudden, their expressions became strange. Damn it! The Diabolism is the Diabolism. They only know how to cause trouble. I still want to use the name of supporting Immortal Island for a few more years. Chiu Wuyuan, why did you drag me into this? If Dongfang Chang'ao and the others saw me, I wouldn't be able to explain myself even if I had 10 mouths. Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart, but he said, I don't like to show my face in public. Don't drag me into your business. I'll do whatever you want. After he said that, if Chiu Wuyuan and the others didn't show their faces, or if there weren't so many people, it wouldn't have been a big deal. However, now that he showed the face of the 10,000 demons in front of everyone, the 4 generals of the Mo family couldn't take it anymore. They wanted to make a move immediately. Chiu Wuyuan opened his arms and blocked them. He said telepathically, don't mess around. This person's cultivation is unfathomable. We aren't his match. It seems that the 10,000 demons' face isn't enough. Chiu Wuyuan mocked himself. He smiled at Dongfang Chang'ao and said, Dongfang Chang'ao, everyone wants to see the true face of the first buyer. The 10,000 demons can't do it. Why don't you try supporting Immortal Island? Dongfang Chang'ao snorted. Naturally, He understood Qiu Wuyuan's intentions. However, if he didn't do this, not only would he be showing weakness to the first buyer, but he would also be showing weakness to the 10,000 demons. Moreover, there were so many people watching. Just as he was hesitating, Yu Qianqiu spoke. He had to speak. This Qiu Wuyuan had a stomach full of evil thoughts. It seemed that he wouldn't stop until he saw him. He had to think of a way to shut him up. Yu Qianqiu sneered and said in a deep voice, "A group of frogs at the bottom of a well. Do you really think that you're the best just because you're the best? Qiu Wuyuan, it seems that it was a mistake for me to punish supporting Immortal Island in the demon ghost domain a few years ago, and let your 10,000 demons go. It's okay. I'll go to your 10,000 demons' place some other day, and let you see as much as you want." As soon as he said this, Dongfang Chang, Ao and Qiu Wuyuan were shocked. They exclaimed in unison, "It's you!" A few people in black suits also stood up. After that, the two of them looked at each other in dismay. They couldn't stop the shock on their faces. Others didn't know what Yu Qianqiu meant, but the two of them naturally knew what he meant. A few years ago, both of them were in the demon ghost domain. 5 elders of supporting Immortal Island, who were in the final stage of passing tribulation, were injured by someone. Dongfang Chang'ao had personally experienced it. How could he forget it? He was still thinking about it just now. As for Qiu Wuyuan and the other sex people, Dongfang Chang'ao, who had just woken up from a coma, also heard something. There was actually a person who could injure so many experts of supporting Immortal Island by himself. After that, all the sects guessed that there was a soul-forming expert hiding in the demon ghost domain. This was originally a secret between the higher-ups of the sections. Yu Qianqiu didn't know about it at that time. It was only when he heard Ferdinand talk about it later that he understood that Bai Changchun had made a move and shocked everyone. Now that the two of them heard such a thing from an outsider, it was a secret that most of the disciples in their sect didn't know. Thinking of this person's unfathomable cultivation, they suddenly felt a little creeped out. It was actually him. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.